Good morning, Commissioners, Chief McDonald, Mr. Sibley, Madam Secretary, Acting Inspector General Florence Hugh, Mr. City Attorney Carlos de la Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, November 19, 2024. It is 9:31 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Shields, Calanche, and Garcia are present, and we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the Board Secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We'll dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We'll alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. I'd like to share an additional note about public comment this morning. Today's agenda includes the LAPD's budget as item number 4D. The department will provide a presentation to the commission this morning. My fellow commissioners and I may ask a few questions. However, much of the discussion will take place at next week's meeting on November 26th. The commission will take additional public comment on the department's budget over the course of the next week. To provide written comment, you may email the commission at policecommission@lapd.online. Please place public comment in the subject line of your email. All comment will be forwarded to the commissioners and will be added to the commission's portion of the LAPD website. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending the meeting in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. Today is the first commission meeting for Chief McDonald. Chief, welcome back to the LAPD and this room. It's good to have you here. With that, we will move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police, Chief McDonald.
Thank you very much, President Suthers. Thank you for the welcome back. It's great to be back. Good morning, President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Acting Inspector General Yu, City Attorney de la Guerra, and Mr. Sibley. Today I'll be discussing significant events from the previous 2 weeks, providing a crime update, and discussing our personnel strength. We have had no officer-involved shootings or categorical uses of force during the past 2-week period. Year-to-date, we've had 24 officer-involved shootings in comparison to 31 this time last year, for a decrease of just under 23%. Significant arrests during our last Board of Police Commissioner meeting. We discussed the vandalism and burning of an MTA bus during the Dodgers World Series celebration. The damage from this crime is estimated to exceed $1 million. Since the incident, detectives from our Major Crimes Division have been working hard to identify those responsible. By reviewing evidence from the scene and analyzing surveillance video from the area, they identified 2 suspects who were involved. With the help from Metropolitan Division, both suspects were located and taken into custody earlier this past week. The cases will be presented to the District Attorney's Office this week for filing consideration. I want to just take a moment to commend the outstanding work of Major Crimes detectives and Metropolitan Division officers. Their dedication and teamwork exemplify the highest standards of this department, and we thank them for their continued commitment to keeping the city safe. In Hollenbeck, on Saturday, November 9th, 3 attempted carjackings occurred in Hollenbeck area, targeting female victims over a 6-hour span. These incidents were in close proximity to each other and involved a suspect with a similar description. The first incident took place at 10:40 hours at a gas station located at 3200 block of Broadway. A woman was pumping gas when a man approached her vehicle and entered the driver's seat, attempting to push her aside while demanding her keys. The victim fought back, using her legs to kick the suspect out of the car before locking the doors. The suspect fled on foot, and the victim, who suffered minor injuries, declined medical treatment but reported the incident to police. The second incident occurred 13:50 hours, just a half a mile away, in a parking lot at 2108 North Broadway. A woman and her 3 daughters were returning to their vehicle when the suspect emerged from nearby bushes and attempted to force his way into their car. He struck the driver's window with a metal object, breaking it. The victim managed to reverse the vehicle and drive away with her daughters. Surveillance footage later confirmed the suspect had followed the family before the attack and had waited near their vehicle. The third incident happened at 1655 at a gas station at 2025 East Cesar Chavez Avenue. A woman was approached by a man while pumping gas, who made her uncomfortable by standing too close and asking for change. After she got into her car, the man forcibly pulled her out and onto the ground. A bystander intervened, pulling the suspect away and prompting him to flee. Detectives immediately went to work gathering and reviewing video evidence to determine the identity of the suspect. The suspect was identified and arrested on November 14th. All 3 victims were able to positively identify the suspect. The case is being finalized and will be presented to the district attorney on November 18th. I would like to acknowledge the swift and diligent efforts of these officers and detectives whose work ensured the suspect was quickly apprehended, preventing further harm to our community. Harbor Division has identified a series of food vendor robberies that began around September 4th and continued through November 16th. 10 incidents have been linked to this pattern, with 8 occurring in the Harbor area, 1 in Torrance, and another in the unincorporated Harbor Gateway area. The robberies involved masked Hispanic male suspects aged 18 to 24, armed with pistols and sometimes accompanied by a female driver. The crimes have primarily targeted food vendors along Harbor's western corridor, often in isolated industrial areas. In several cases, the suspects have escalated their violence by pistol whipping victims, and during one incident, a shot was fired into the air. Recognizing the vulnerability of our food vendors, Harbor Division has made community outreach a top priority. Detectives, senior lead officers, and patrol officers have met with vendors directly to provide safety tips and to encourage reporting of these crimes without fear. Additional resources have been assigned to the area to prevent additional robberies from occurring. Detectives are working to identify the suspects involved in these crimes and have been coordinating their efforts with our surrounding partner agencies. We urge anyone with information about these robberies to come forward. Even the smallest detail could help bring these suspects to justice and prevent further harm to our food vendor community. On November 16th, Northeast Patrol officers responded to a call of an assault with a deadly weapon, which was a shooting. Once at the scene, they located the victim, who was an on-duty Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA, bus driver. The bus driver sustained gunshot wounds to her jaw, hand, and buttocks while on a layover. As the sole occupant of the bus, the suspect fled the scene. The officers met with the victim at the hospital, who was able to provide the identity of the suspect, who was the victim's ex-boyfriend. Based on this information, the incident was classified as domestic violence-related incident and not a random act of violence. Detectives were able to locate video evidence of the crime, which included the suspect lying in wait in the area for the bus to arrive. Detectives are following up on several leads and locating the suspect and hope to apprehend him in the very near future. We have a missing persons case that got some attention. On November 7th, officers from Pacific responded to a welfare check for Chanel Maya Banks. After visiting her home and speaking with her spouse, they found that Banks was not there and so saw no evidence of a crime or foul play. In the following days, officers responded to multiple welfare check calls from her family who were unable to contact her. Each time, officers found no sign of Banks at the residence, and based on the information from her spouse, determined no crime had occurred. However, since she could not be reached, a missing persons report was filed. On November 11th, officers learned Banks might be in Texas. They coordinated with a local police agency whose officers located Banks, confirmed her identity, and found that she was safe. Banks explained that she was traveling, did not wish to speak with her family or spouse, and was removed from the missing person system after her identity was verified. While Banks's family continued to dispute this account and requested additional welfare checks, both our department and the Texas Police Agency has confirmed that Banks is safe. She is considered a voluntary missing person and has chosen not to have contact with her family at this time. I want to emphasize that missing persons cases are handled with the utmost seriousness, and no one is removed from the system without officers meeting with the individual and verifying their well-being. I'd like to thank our officers and our partner officers in Texas for their thorough work and collaboration in resolving the case. Their dedication ensured Banks' safety and brought clarity to the situation. Just a recap of crimes for the week ending November 17th. All analysis is based on offense count except for homicides and victims shot. For year-to-date through November 16th, for the 4-week period compared to the prior 4-week period, combined crimes and property crimes are down 14.4%, persons crimes are down 4.3%, and property crimes are down 17.2%. A homicide analysis, homicides have been trending down since week ending March 16th of this year. In the past 35 weeks, our year-to-date increase has seen a decreasing range from from an increase of 30.8% down to a decrease of 14.4%. When comparing that to last year, the city has seen a year-to-date decrease of 12.3% in homicides, and then compared to 2022, city's seen a decrease of 27.4% in homicides. Citywide, there were a total of 250 homicides year-to-date through November 16th, and of the 257 in this year, 91 are gang-related based on the homicide hand tally. For comparison, in 2023, 143 of the 293 homicides were gang-related. So gang-related homicides are down 36.4% compared to 2023 and down 52.8% compared to 2022. So good news on that front. On the victim shot analysis, in the past 36 weeks, the victim shot has fluctuated between an increase of 14.7 to a decrease of 18.4. Year-to-date citywide, victim shot numbers are down 196 compared to 2023 and down 311 compared to 2022. For the past 4 weeks, ending 11/16, there's been an increase of 11.6 or 8 victims shot compared to the prior 4 weeks. When you look at the 4-week comparison for the following areas have seen significant increases in victims shot. Southeast Division up 71.4, which is 5. Central up 133%, which is 4 additional, and Newton up 100%, again 4 additional. Offenses-based count aggravated assault analysis with the combined NIBRS and SRS data. That's to signify the transition between SRS data and NIBRS moving forward with the FBI requirements. For the past 4 weeks, ag assaults are up 0.1% or 1 compared to the prior 4-week. Area with significant increases in ag assaults for the 4-week period, Hollywood was up 46% or 26 incidents, and Central up 16% or 17 incidents. On robberies, or the offense-based count for robbery analysis with combined NIBRS and SRS data. Past 4 weeks, robberies are down 9.9% compared with the prior 4 weeks. The drivers of the robbery numbers, areas with significant increases compared to the prior 4 weeks, Wilshire up 30.8% or 8 incidents, And for the past 4 weeks, Wilshire had 34 robberies compared to 26 for the prior 4-week period. That indicates the 4-week period is higher compared to the average number of robberies in Wilshire area. On weapons involvement, there have been 289 strong-arm robberies, which are 44% of the total robberies for the 4-week period. There have been 146 robberies with a firearm, which is 22% of the total number of robberies for that 4-week period. Firearms recovered are down 8.6% year-to-date compared to 2023. The top premise type for robbery is street, a parkway, or a sidewalk, so outside, with 281 for the 4-week period. Combined other businesses, restaurants, mini-mart, clothing stores, liquor stores, market, gas station, and department stores account for 124 robberies for that same 4-week period. Burglary, on that front, for the past 4 weeks, burglaries are down 10.4% compared to the 4-week period. Commercial burglaries are down 18%, and residential burglaries are down 5.7%. Offense count for motor vehicle thefts for the past 4 weeks, they're down 11.5% compared to the 4-week period this time prior. For the past 4 weeks ending 11/9 compared to the prior 4 weeks, the following areas have seen significant increases in motor vehicle thefts. Harbor is up 52.4 or 33 incidents. Rampart up 7.7 or 7 incidents. The top vehicles stolen for the past 4 weeks, Kia overall with 172 numbers, but that's down 8.5% from prior. Kia Optima is a big part of that at 53, and Kia Soul at 36. Followed by Chevrolet, 184 of those, Silverados, 68 of those, and Camaros, 7, and then Hyundai, 181, 64 of those were Sonatas, and Elantra was 74. On the personnel issue, for sworn personnel as of October 14th, our number was 8,790, and civilian personnel now a total of 2,623. We currently...
Chief, can you please pause for a second? Sir, can you please sit down? You've had a lot of time to stand there and put on your gear. Sorry for that interruption, Chief.
No, thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, and to close out, our final numbers for reserve officers were at 380 currently staffed. And so I'd reach out to anybody who has an interest as well. And I always make the plug that we are hiring, and we would love to have more reserve officers as well, but a tremendous time of opportunity for people to want to be able to join the department, both professional staff and sworn, to be able to help be part of what we're going to see in the upcoming years with the events we have coming our way. An exciting time to be in this profession. Thank you for the opportunity to share this info with you.
Thank you, Chief. And I do believe our next hiring mixer at the Amundsen Recruit Training Center is this Saturday. So hopefully we'll see 100 people again, as we usually do on Saturday.
Thank you, Commissioner.
With
Appreciate
that,
it.
I'll defer to Vice President Shields for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Chief, for the update, and thank you for talking about some of the trends that you're seeing and a lot of the good work that's being done by department personnel and catching some of the suspects, both with the MTA bus fire and others. When you mentioned the food vendor robberies, I just wanted to kind of, you've been very busy since your confirmation and swearing in, and you've already had a lot of events. One thing that I really appreciated during your confirmation hearing before City Council was, making it very clear what the department's role is with regards to immigration. And as an immigrant myself, I want to make very clear that all of the strides that the department has made in building those relationships with the immigrant community to encourage people to who are victims to report the crimes, to encourage witnesses to come forward, how important all of those relationships have been, and the current policy of the department of not doing immigration work, I'd like you to just kind of speak on that even if there's with the change of administration, that people in the city of Los Angeles can continue to come forward to LAPD without a fear of, being turned over to ICE.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the opportunity. Just a point of clarification, there's an awful lot of rumors out there as to what is and what's not going to happen in Los Angeles and around the country with the coming administration change. LAPD's policy is crystal clear, going back to 1979 with Special Order 40, which changed the manual the following year as part of our policy. We don't stop people to determine their immigration status. We don't interact with people based on any of their immigration status. That's not a factor for us and hasn't been my whole time on the job. More recently, the Trust Act was put in place in the state, which further defined that, and then followed by the California Values Act, which was previously known as Senate Bill 54. And so it's crystal clear to us as to what our role as a police agency is, and it's not to participate with ICE in any kind of roundups or any of the things that have been put out there that is going to occur, that won't occur with the LAPD's assistant in Los Angeles. We need the trust of the people that we serve in this community. The migrant community is a big part of this community, and if people aren't willing to come forward and be witnesses and stand up to what they saw and try and do the right thing to help protect themselves and their neighbors, then we can't be effective in trying to protect the residents of this city. So thank you for the opportunity to provide that clarification, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chief, and I really look forward to working with you on a host of issues, continuing to hold the department accountable while revamping the discipline process and recruiting and all of the different issues that came up during confirmation and else. So really welcome aboard and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Before I go on to Commissioner Kamalanche, signs and banners are prohibited. Take the sign off the chair, put it back in your backpack. It is a distraction. I'm talking to you. Thank you. Commissioner Kamalanche.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for that clarification on LAPD policy when it comes to immigration and complying or responding to directives from the federal government. What I would like to add is, given the fear, uncertainty of our time, given this issue, I would love to have in our weekly or maybe a monthly report on any issues having to do with immigration. So if we could just make it either a standing item on the agenda for maybe every other meeting or once a month, just to assure the public about what is happening and our response.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Good morning. Thank you, Chief, and welcome. Just like everybody has so far asked, and is at top of mind, is the rights as it relates to the immigrant population here in LA. So I was able to participate in a conversation with some immigrant rights organizations a few days ago, and really was reminded that we don't need to start from scratch, from zero. There's a lot of policies that were implemented in the first round of this administration to address some of those concerns and to add to the protections. And so I definitely would echo Commissioner Kalanche's suggestion of ensuring that we are attentive to it and possibly bringing it up into this meeting, either on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. But also ensuring that the officers and the department as a whole and the community as a whole understand what those policies are. And so figuring out a way of how we can educate the department, but also ensure that the community understands what those rights are and what those protections are, and that they shouldn't fear reaching out to law enforcement for help because of potential mistrust. And so the more we're able to relay those messages, I think the more the community will feel comfortable reaching out, and hopefully we reduce incidents that are out of compliance with those policies and the goals of the department. So looking forward to working with you on that and the leadership in the department, but also working with the coalitions that come together and the leaders that come together around those issues.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Madam Secretary, please call the first speaker.
The first speaker is Jonathan Foster.
Hi, Jonathan Foster. Jamil Shaw was shot in the face and died by illegal alien Jose Espinoza. I hope you get shot in the face and die. Special Order 40 in 1979 is so you don't get shot. That's what it's for. It's not about so you don't piss off the immigrants. And this morphed into not turning suspects, criminal suspects, over to ICE. You're all murderers. And you deserve to die. You're guilty. We arrest you, prosecute you, and sentence you to death in the same hour. We have lethal injection, noose, bomb, firing squad, electric chair. Such ways are all pretty sick. But you should die by Jose Espinoza, same guy killed Jamil Shaw Jr. And Barack and his wife and 2 kids should die down to the California state legislature, the LA government, the whole voice in California that votes for illegal aliens, California Values Act, Sanctuary City Act should be executed by Jose Espinoza. 30 million of you. He should kill 30 million of you and his mother. Should also kill his own mother. You're all guilty. If you or anyone supports this, needs to be given the death penalty. 75% of the state, California Values Act, would kill 30 million people. It's really sick. LA, you're like a good old boy, badge tarnisher. The LA Unified is aiding and abetting. You are aiding and abetting Jose Espinoza killed Jamil Shaw Jr. Fair Immigration Organization killed Jamil Shaw Jr. You can't harbor illegal aliens. You know, you pick the chief that can't make an arrest. He's 64 years old. Anybody 20 would beat the shit out of him all over the place. I like him, but he's not the chief. What you should do is what I said, because you people weren't here when I said this. You should have the least scoring cadet who's an officer be the chief. And have him and the command staff in the cars making the arrests. They sit around here in air conditioning. Pick a new chief. George Floyd Valentine. God is damning the department by half. It's down by half. Who sent the Valentine? Or this thing's going nowhere.
Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Do you hear me?
Okay, we'll move on to the next.
Okay. We have Andrew Gravener.
More prepared than McDonald was today. Starting out with the Chiefs report. The Chiefs report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If we only get 3 minutes, he should only get 3 minutes. If he wants to take more time, then we should get more time. And it's like we just get long spiels about weird things that happened in the department. Like they had like a community event or something. And, but I mean, it was barely prepared. Just ran in at 9:29 and, spent just kind of mumbled through the report. I could barely even understand what you were saying. I mean, I could barely understand, just mumbling through the report, fumbling through his notes. They had like a week to prepare for this. I mean, I guess this is the guy who was, elected out as sheriff 4 years ago. The people had said that we don't want this guy in office, or 6 years ago. We don't want this guy in office, but then you just recommend him for police chief. And the city council is passing a sanctuary city motion today. Make sure that this guy doesn't collaborate with ICE. We have, all right, now let's move on to the consent agenda. We have a number of items on the consent agenda today. We have donations. You have at least one donation from your former police chief, or from the association named after your police chief from the 50s or whatever, who was extremely racist, but you keep just, celebrating him. We have a donation, just all kinds of weird donations. You have one from like a jewelry store, like a donation from a jewelry store. And I had to even look up, $14K, and I had to briefly look up what it was, because the first thing I saw was like a international gang that mostly does like drug trafficking with the same name. I assume it's the jewelry store and not the drug trafficking gang, international drug trafficking gang. But I mean, we have donations, multiple ones related to the holiday party. You have your budget. Apparently you need more money, even though he could even manage to mumble through some notes that it was that crime is down. So why do you need more money if crime's down? It seems like if crime's down in any kind of logic, we need less of you. We don't, but we know you don't even solve crime or anything. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. And would you stop targeting Jason Reedy and his baby every meeting? You're doing that.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Hassan Tran. Hassan Tran. I believe we're having issues with the Zoom.
Let's move to the next in-person. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hi. Good morning, Los Angeles Police Department and everybody. My name is Hassan Tran. Today, Tuesday, November 19, 2024. Please help me put my name in U.S. government system. I am a person very important, right and safety to all police department all around USA and all USA veteran and all US military and all American people and all human rights all around the world peacefully. I am very sure 100% all American people love me and all human rights all around the world. They all support me. But more important, I am seriously need help from Los Angeles Police Department and all USA veteran and all US military and all American people. Please, all of you, protect me. Better change for all American people and all human rights all around the world right here at Los Angeles Police Department. Please help me give my information to all American people and everybody. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you. I'm here for protect everybody. You know that. But you have all my information. Thank you again. Okay. Love all of you.
Thank you.
I will be here every weekend.
The next speaker, please, Tyson J.D.
All right. There's a new sheriff in town. Chief, you talked about the immigration, the illegal, and then using my critical thinking skills, and I believe there are two kinds of illegal. There are kind of law-abiding illegal, and then there are kind of criminal illegal. So based on what you said, it seems like using a random critical thinking skills, if the illegal criminal illegal are going to Texas, they know they're gonna go being deported. They are not gonna commit a crime in Texas. But if you are saying, you know, you're gonna continue to protect them, so every millions can come to LA, knowing you will protect them, knowing they will not have facing any deportation consequences. There are millions of them. You only have 8,000 officers. Two concerns about the new chief. Number one is crime issue. Somehow in many Asian countries, you know, my mom, my sister, they were able to, you know, go to a convenience store at 10 p.m. without fearing getting shot. But you know, my mom can go to, you know, a convenience store late night, go getting some groceries without worrying about getting robbed. But Chief, in LA, downtown LA, South Central, Figueroa, can you tell me, are you going to willing let your wife walk alone late night? You already know the situation. Why we get to that point, I don't know. You are the law enforcement executive. Second of all is morale. I'm really happy that you talked to the Fox News and then you said one of your priority is boosting the morale. That's good. However, based on my experience for the past 2 years in the police commission meeting, I feel one reason the LAPD officer morale is low is they are scared to speak up. I'm experiencing the same issue. In my school, if I'm talking about anything anti-DEI, if I'm talking about anything promoting meritocracy, then, you know, my professors are giving me a hard time. Same with LAPD. And I believe majority of the LAPD, they want a fair promotion. They want to be treated fairly. You do not get a promotion because of your DEI status. You do not get a promotion because you are LGBT, because you are black. You get a promotion because the work you do for the department, because of the work you do for the city, because how many lives you protected in the city of LA. That's what my understanding. However, when LAPD is talking about anti-DEI, I'm sure the police commission will giving them a hard time. And I am experiencing a hard time at my school because I support meritocracy. I do not support just because you have a skin color, you get a differential preferential treatment. So if we can boost morale, we're gonna boost meritocracy first.
Thank you.
Next, we have Audit LA.
Good morning, Chief. I don't know if you remember me. I think you do. We had a nice little chat. I didn't even know who he was, just at the luncheon stand at City Hall, and he said he's going to be our new chief. So, welcome. And I asked you, I don't know if you remember, I asked if you had an email, and you said not yet. So I'm wanting to see if that's possible, if you do have that email yet. Because I'm here for, there's a lot of things I would like to talk to you. I've been coming here for many months. Miss Yu knows a lot about the issue, so does the commission. But the one thing I really want to update you about is that there's a lot of, and this is not a knock on all officers. I am not anti-police, and I'm not going to knock every officer or put them all in the same boat. That's not fair. But there's a lot of collusion between, and I'm going to say it, I'm not even going to say allegedly, because we have enough evidence on film of between Scientology and two divisions, Hollywood Division and Northeast Division, and it's just not ending no matter what. And one of the big problems is that one of the main Scientologists, very high-level OSA member named Janet Whelan, is on both of their CPABs. And that's a problem. Like, we've put in numerous cases, both to the police and to the Inspector General, that there should be cases that we, I know you can't tell us, but as long as there's any open cases dealing between Scientology and LAPD and the relationship between the two, there should not be any Scientologist on CPAB until all those investigations are cleared, because it's compromising and it's not fair, because things are still happening. And I would love to be able to just catch you up or and give information and everything that we have. It's a very serious issue. They are being defiant of the city, even for the minor thing, well, seemingly minor, but not being able to, they have, where they are, I'm sorry, where they are, sorry. I have a lot of people very interested in this topic. There's a lot of stuff, like they have all these illegal ADA planters, 250 of them, that the city has ordered them to move. They have even, it's been given to the city attorney for them to deal with, and they are just defiantly doubling down and making it even harder for even their own people. I have a video of a blind man with a stick, and he cannot get through these planters hardly. And it's just a defiance. So there's such a, right now, there really needs to be discussions on how to handle this. And as far as the other topics about the money being given, I'm all for you guys getting donations because it takes the burden off the taxpayer. But I don't like that the Police Foundation, they don't have to show us who's giving that money. And my concern right now is like any entity, maybe Scientology or other entities, because they don't show us who's giving the money. And so there's like a level of non-transparency, and I'm hoping that you will help bring change to that. I am for you getting the money, but I just want to know who's giving it to you, sir. And thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
The next speaker, please, Jason Reedy.
All right, so Jim, as both a parent and a community member, I know that LAPD's own reporting of crimes committed by your pigs only captures a fraction of the true impact of LAPD's criminal ways. For example, according to LAPD records, despite the department having sustained complaints against rapist LAPD pig Gabriel Espadas, the LAPD is telling the public they have no disciplinary records for him. You saw how a higher power couldn't even put up with your bullshit during your swearing in. I mean, you were the only one to have mic issues that day. For you to say that you have an unwavering commitment to serve the people of this city with every ounce of dedication and integrity I possess, you have no integrity. I mean, you were described as a man of integrity by Errol Southers, the founder of the Santa Monica Power Program that led to the molestation of over 200 people, and someone who literally lied to Congress. Now, Old McDonald has signaled through adopting the most data-driven strategies that he is eager to not only mimic, but broaden the brutality Angelenos faced under Bratton. Now let's take a closer look at your constant contradictions. At the October 15th commission meeting during AB 481 presentation, Commander Sufatelli said that she would schedule a public engagement meeting at the most convenient time for the full engagement of the community within 30 days. Rasha, you encouraged her to try to get that meeting on the books in advance of this full city council vote, which is today. This so-called public engagement meeting was announced on October 20th on LAPD's Facebook page only. There was no mention of it on LAPD socials, including the PIO, no mention of it on LAPD Commission socials, or via any other method of communication. What's more is that meeting was held on a Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. with 2 days' notice. So I'm wondering, who in this room considers that to be the best time for the quote-unquote full involvement of the community? Who thinks that public was quote-unquote well-publicized at a requirement of AB 481? Who thinks 2 days' notice is enough for any concerned citizen to participate in a Q&A with your personnel? In fact, LAPD has a budget item, a budget request for $275,000 for your website, and the LAPD Online doesn't even have a dedicated webpage for AB 481 or an established communication line for the complaints around LAPD's use of military weaponry. Now, speaking of websites, let's mention a website visited amongst your rank and file. Yes, I'm talking about the Stop LAPD Spying's Watch the Watchers website that has become so popular amongst sworn and civilian LAPD employees that some within the department have taken to calling it LAPD Facebook. Now, many of your pigs say they use this site regularly, sometimes on a daily basis, and yet this commission vilified, criminalized, and denigrated the coalition for it. Now, Lou, since you have some newfound concern around the budget, maybe you can lead the charge on this budget line item. LAPD is budgeting for 585 new recruits, 45 recruits over 13 classes. LAPD has seen an average of 22 new pigs over the last 6 graduating classes. That included graduating 17 pigs last month, the lowest in a decade. I want to ask, instead of budgeting for a more realistic and yet still very ambitious goal of 30, one that we'll make sure you won't make, they want 45. So you should suggest breaking this into 2 budget requests, start with 390.
Thank you. Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up. Step away from the podium. Step away from the podium. You are disrupting the meeting. This is your first and last warning for disrupting the meeting. Stop disrupting the meeting.
The next speaker, please, Megan.
You are asking for an 8% budget increase, a $262 million increase when every other city department has hiring freezes. You are quite literally bankrupting us. You're not even maintaining basic and legally required controls over your increasing inventory of military equipment. You are the deadliest police department in the nation. Your rank and file is filled with criminals. Those crimes are uncovered on a weekly basis. The most recent, your ex-officer who sexually assaulted a woman, he 5150'd, an assault which included forcing her to have sex with an animal. Unspeakably horrific and yet par for the course in my 2 years of paying attention to the activities of LAPD. Chief McDonald, this was your first meeting and you phoned in your chief's report. I appreciate your authenticity. No reason to give the impression that this meeting has any effect on your decision making. Rasha, you said you were looking forward to continuing to hold the department accountable. I would just love to know when that happens. Does all the ass kissing happen out here and all the accountability happen back there? Because I've been to about 80 or 90% of the meetings in the past 2 years, and literally the only time I remember you asking even a hard question was when you chastised Chief Moore for arresting Killer Mike at the Grammys. That's the only thing I can think of. I can't think of any other time when you've challenged anything anybody has said sitting in that seat or had anything negative to say about the activities of this department, other than some vague statements about public trust and needing to earn it. Accountability is an action, and if you were doing it, they would not like you. It would not feel cozy in here for you.
The next speaker, please, Mr. Herman. And following Mr. Herman will be Hamid Khan.
Congratulations, James P. McDonald. And congratulations.
Lose the sign.
to Trump.
Lose the sign or lose your privilege to have public comment. That's your first and last warning.
Thanking the
That's your
chief
first
of
and last warning.
police for his adventure into LA after he was warned, stay back. Don't take this position. It's not healthy. It's not good for you. Despite criticism, despite the anarchy of criminals like you, sir, who defies the First Amendment by holding a sign? Are you that ridiculous? I'm talking about you, Southers. Are you that ridiculous? That's the reason why there's no effective communication. That's why I'm here as Batman. The chief who knows the difference when we, the great Native American Indians, trampled your type of people at Little Bighorn because you're racist, you're discriminatory, and you dislike what I and other people criticize you for, and that's do your goddamn job. Now, again, if I use the N-word or I say the word nigga, it's not acceptable under the First Amendment. Now, you tell that to the Compton kids who gave me all this knowledge of NWA. That's the knowledge I received playing that music over and over and over, understanding that America is not safe, Mr. Southers. It's not safe. Not even I would put my wife with beautiful perfume out in the street to have some dirty motherfucker put her hands on. Just like the chief would not allow that to happen. And whether or not Carrot Bass sucks a dick or not, that's not my business.
You're off topic, Herbert.
No, I'm
Yes,
talking about DIC. What does it stand for?
You're off topic.
It's an acronym, Dick. So, once again, Mr. Attorney, Bain Act 52.1, 42 U.S.C.
I
1983.
don't need to hear that. You're off topic. Move on.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on, folks. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we find that the liability of the city by endorsing the Los Angeles Police Department to receive funding that is not earmarked as donations is a crime. And why is that? Because padding your wallets, protecting the evil that has allowed the city and its budget in the crisis, matter of fact, the goddamn crisis is about the budget. Let's talk about the budget. And by the way, I'm writing to Donald Trump to have a consent decree change and reform here because we want.
Thank you. Thank you. Your public comment is ended. Step away from the podium.
Yes, my nigga, I'll step away. Thank you.
The next speaker, Hamid Khan.
I wish, Carlos, you were that ready to pounce on people when your own department was fucking things over. Jason just spoke about the photos and Watch the Watchers website. And this is just November 13th, LA Times. I mean, let's not even talk about us for a second. Their headline says, undercover officers in lawsuit over LAPD photos are just regular cops. And this was a lawsuit by 900 of these supposedly undercovers, which had filed as anonymous John Does. And it says that 900 whose names in this lawsuit have been kept secret have no right to stay anonymous. So here we go. All this time, since March of 2023, this body, Briggs, all of you, is coming after us, defaming us, discrediting us, putting a target on our back, threatening us. We have received death threats. We have received threats on our emails and all of that stuff, that people threatening us that they're going to do this to us and do that to us because we released the photos, which were taken under a California Public Records Act. And your fucking boss even went to the extent that she, under all the lies, manipulation, and conspiracies, that she even made a move in the assembly to water down the California Public Records Act. This is the kind of fuckery and conspiracy that we come every week and we want to expose and we talk about it. And this is what you do. This is what your office does. This is how, they try to go after people, silence us. But we're not going to be silent. We can't be silenced. And this is what happens. You were just talking about Sanctuary City, and you were talking about data collection. But you know that the Flock license plate reader scanners that the LAPD uses, it has the capacity to identify, for tagging license plates as being associated with undocumented persons, which business improvement districts and HOAs are using as well. So when you talk about data collection, are you familiar with ACCICs are? And I'm looking at you, police commissioners. Are you familiar with ACCICs are, right? Which are known as the Area Crime Community Intelligence Centers, which were built on the old CSOC model, the Community Safety Operations Center. Where does the data go in? How does the data get together? Who gets all the information? Are you familiar with JRIC, the Joint Regional Intelligence Center? So whether it's the Sanctuary City or whether McDonald says, because he's full of bullshit anyways, he's the guy who showed the middle finger to the oversight committee of LA sheriffs when he was a sheriff, when they voted against the use of drones. And he said, no, fuck off, I'll still continue to do that. So this is the kind of culture of conspiracies, lies, manipulation. And last thing I want to say is that you have this thing on the item from Watch to Boston. You look at their 1-minute video, promo video about Watch to Boston. And this is the same old tropes of broken windows policing, where they are saying that they needed a police escort to go into Watch to film a person over there and talk to a person. We go to Watch all the time. But that's the kind of fuckery and that's the kind of bullshit that we are going to keep on outing and keep on exposing.
Thank you, sir.
Keep on disrupting, keep
Madam Secretary, please call the next speaker.
The next speaker is Matios Kirin.
My name is Matthias with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. Just to reiterate the lie the city told about these undercover officers and just how egregious that was and who played a part in it. We were sat in this room surrounded by police officers when Commissioner Briggs suggested and implicitly said that we had threatened the lives of officers by releasing undercover photos. My photo, along with my name, was sent to the LAPPL mailer saying I was conspiring with Liz Rhodes to endanger undercover officers. And the city has come out and said that was a lie, and that's not addressed at all in this body, regardless of how you've endangered community members. But that's just what you do. That's the inherent violence of this body. So I just want to highlight that real quick. And then to this point about Watts to Boston, this donation on the agenda, that's, quote, for families who are economically suffering from food insecurity, needing basic living supplies, and housing needs due to unforeseen incidents of criminal activity. This is textbook white saviorism, just in a nutshell. And Hamid talked about that 1-minute video on their About page about needing a police escort in the daytime, is what they're saying. But we spend a lot of time in Nickerson Gardens, Imperial Courts, in Watts, and we do just fine. And just to say, this group, Watts to Boston, they operate by, quote, pairing the high school students in Watts with a host family in Boston to help them navigate their path to college. As if the families here in LA, the black and brown families, the families I come from, are inherently incapable of navigating this course. There are difficulties for sure, but those difficulties are due to a lack of resources. And so to bring in this white savior complex, this nonprofit industrial foundational complex, to offer up little tokenized resources for 1 or 2 children, while this police department siphons $3.2 billion of those resources that could address, quote, basic needs, food insecurity, housing needs, right? This is just such bullshit. And looking into it more, this website says they partner with Operation Progress, which was founded in 2000 by John Coughlin, a then LAPD officer. And they select students from the Watts community, young folks, and put them in Catholic schools, right? And we see that Rick Caruso, Amada Tangarides, Bob Arcos are all on the board of Operation Progress. And, even considering that notion, right, despite, the options here would be to invest in our public schools, right? Make sure everybody's good. But instead, we pluck 1 or 2 community members and then put them in Catholic schools, which are inherently better. So it no longer becomes a question of resources and who's kind of benefiting from them. Instead, it becomes a process of picking 1 or 2 community members to cultivate into people you can deputize down the line. And, lastly, just to name that this is supported by the Cummings Foundation, which is based in Boston. And Bill Cummings is a real estate mogul with billions of dollars in assets. And, we don't think of billionaires as being self-serving and, selfless. We think of them as self-serving. And just to say, this precedes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the next speaker.
The next speaker is Donald Harland.
Is he the last one?
Hi, I'm Donald Harlan. First of all, I'll bring back up the point. The mayor can appoint the chief of police. The mayor's never had the power to do that. That can never happen, even if that person was actually the mayor. Several items I noticed on the agenda. Donations to and from LAPD. LAPD isn't doing any donations, but if they need to maintain their equipment, somebody needs to maintain their equipment out there. Somebody needs training for protecting infrastructure. They need some plumbing training, that kind of stuff. That's all good. That should be part of the city. And also I noticed there's people from the previous police chiefs or people working in LAPD that no longer have their leader or something happened and they're looking for jobs, jumping in different things. We don't want bad people continuing, but there's a lot of jobs. Farrier services for horses, yes, good. I would like to also include retired horses. There's several other horses maintained by the city that need to be taken care of. Some big Budweiser horses. All that needs to be included in the city's livestock report. I'm concerned about the spending from the city and the LAPD. I noticed that with this new Jim McDonald that there's spending from the roads. I noticed that you're pulling money from roads, and you may have been an employee from the roads, or that you may be paid from them somehow to service LAPD for something happening here. I don't really know. Or what's really going on, but you know there's no spending for roads. That money's mine, those are my roads, and nobody's supposed to be spending money out of there. It's real strict. Hess and Associates. I don't know if this is the same Hess and Associates we have so many problems with in the oil company, but definitely no reinstating Hess. A bunch of people need jobs. There's a lot of stuff to do. I'm concerned about this new chief of police presenting forged documents, presenting false history, or there's a difference between disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. And I don't want to see any people replaced or anything like that. Also, I noticed you might be chasing some bad races.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mike C.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Everything.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'm shocked. I mean, you guys see the irony with what your first statements were on this. You're gonna subvert federal law. You're not gonna enforce federal law because somebody's butthurt about an election. I mean, come on. Elections have consequences. Not everybody voted for the Democrats. That's just the way it works. Sometimes we get a Republican, sometimes we don't. Although in California, I'm surprised we ever get a Republican for anything. I mean, why would you guys say something like that? We're not gonna enforce federal law. Come on, that's just stupid. I mean, what kind of an organization are you? Oh, I know. You're appointed by the city council. They're a bastion of the Constitution, aren't they? You're, the mayor, DEI mayor. She did one good thing in her whole career. She gave us Chief McDonald. Hopefully that pans out to be good. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Illegal aliens are voting, they're driving. They have no right to vote in our elections. And guess what they are? Because we have no voter ID. I can walk in and say, oh, I live at this address. Here's my ballot. Illegal aliens have addresses. I grew up in a barrio. There's lots of illegal aliens that have houses. It doesn't make any sense. You guys just sound like you're, continuing the lawfare here in California against the Constitution and Americans. Really, really troubling. I mean, I'm not anti-police in any way. I'm pro-police. I have a suggestion, and this is another topic. As far as MacArthur Park goes and the shakedown of the vendors, which is wrong. Have you guys ever considered putting a substation in MacArthur Park of the LAPD? I mean, it may make MacArthur Park a better place to go to, knowing there's a substation in the middle of the park. It might cut down on the gangbangers on the outside corners over there, shaking these people down, doing some racketeering. So it's something to consider.
Excuse me, sir, hold on one moment. Can we keep the conversations in the audience down so we can listen to the speaker? Thank you. Sorry, please continue.
Just a suggestion. I mean, a substation would be great to have in MacArthur Park. I've gone to the deli over there across the street, Langer's, and that place it's a scary place to park your car, My wife and I got out of the car and she was like, yikes, it's a scary place. And I'm like, yeah, it is. We'll just head into the place, get some sandwiches and leave. But, it's too bad there's no police around. Hey, a substation would be a great idea. It's like a pie in the sky idea, but hopefully it's considered on some level, or you have to at least study it. Anyway, that's all I have. May God bless LAPD.
The next speaker, Raul Montes. Macias, I'm sorry. It looks like Montes.
Good morning, Police Chief Jim McConnell. I'm sorry, McDonald Raul. Shame on you. Good morning, Police Commissioners. The late Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy once said, every community gets the kind of law enforcement it insists on. I'm asking the chief to arrest the watch commander who was working at 3:06 a.m. this morning and refused a welfare check at 5134 Raphael Street. It has been denied time and time again because we have a vigilante who's moved in, a vigilante and avenger who I empathize why he did this. He murdered Sean Evan Buer and is driving his car. And he moved in to that location. That is the house belonging to Young Saw Chai, who's suffered crimes against humanity that I've come in here and I have stressed over and over to do something, but Northeast Division is corrupt and they didn't look for Sean Evan Buer. They didn't look for Calvin, I believe his name is Ford, who tried to stab me at that residence. And also, he was taken out by South Pasadena police. I witnessed it because I'm homeless because of Sean Evan Buer. He wanted that house, and I came in here and testified. This Avenger is Asian, I believe. He is Korean. He said, fuck that, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker. And he went out there to El Segundo and murdered him. He's driving his car, okay? And he has expired license tags, December 2022. I confronted him twice. The second time I said, you murdered Sean Evan Buer, didn't you, sir? He said nothing. Started walking up the steps. You murdered Sean Evan Buer, sir. You're driving his car. I seen that car 4 years in a row when I lived with Sean. And, you know, he just slammed the door. He comes and goes as he pleases because the police do not arrest their own. They do not want to pick up this gentleman who is, I should call him a gentleman, but he had a grievance, and I empathize with him because the fucking Northeast Division are criminals who will not allow you to see a watch commander. He is not available. What the hell is he doing? Watching cartoons? I want him out here now. You're not going to see him, Raul. I want someone to apprehend this Avenger. He killed Sean. There's no doubt about it. He had a hand in killing Callan, who tried to stab me because I told him, that dude that just opened the gate for you, young man, this Asian fellow, that dude on that skateboard that just went off, who's a Satanist, tried to stab me. He goes, okay, that guy's on my list. The reason he moved in there was to kill everyone that was involved in the rape and the humiliation and the crimes against humanity foisted on Young Saw Chai, who hasn't been seen in a month.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next, we
Thank
have
you,
Steve
sir.
Riley.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay.
I'd like to start off by congratulating Chief Jim McDonnell. As a resident of Los Angeles, I say welcome home. Los Angeles is blessed to have you sitting in that seat. And I'm going to play a little bit of a musical tribute for a moment. Indeed, happy days are here again. And I just want to mention something. 2 weeks ago, we had an election and the people spoke. And I tried to speak on that day. And for some reason, the Zoom function was not working properly. It wasn't acknowledged. Even today, I heard someone try to speak in the beginning of the meeting, and I don't know what the issue is, but if it's a technical issue, please get IT to fix it. Communication is key. And even right now, I can only see my name and I see the hand up. I don't see you, and I don't know if I'm being heard. I hope I am being heard. Chief McDonnell on the lapdonline.org website has a chief's message. When you hit the play button, it doesn't play. These things need to be corrected. They need to be fixed. But I want to stay positive today. And on the issue of immigration, remember, you have to distinguish between illegal immigration and legal immigration. I suggest everyone read Special Order 40. Take the time to actually read it. And remember Jamil Shaw Jr. Okay, there are many victims of crime. Many of them are committed by illegal immigrants. Once the arrest is made, that person, the arrestee, should be transported to LA County Jail, where there should be an ICE agent checking their status. I'm not talking about mass roundups, which I think is just an improper term. We're talking about focus on the criminals, and focus on making LA safer for everyone. LAPD does not ask victims and witnesses about their immigration status. That's been clear for years. Let's not fearmonger. We don't need reports every week on that. So let's everybody do their job from the federal, state, and local level, enforce the rule of law. And God bless the LAPD, and welcome back, Chief Jim McDonald. Thank you.
The last in-person speaker, Michelle.
So, Jim McDonald, I bet all these sycophants really cheered you on today because that's who they are. But we voted you out of office, and we, the people of this city, do not want you in office. And we're going to make that really clear, really crystal clear. And you know, the last time I was here, my friend spoke about this police department bankrupting the city, having to unemploy people because they don't have the money because of what the cops are doing and what you're spending. Now, Kalancha, this group listened to you. They paid attention to you, but only a tiny, tiny bit, Kalancha. And is he still getting the $500,000? I bet he is. And he's double dipping and getting his retirement, and he's going to get another retirement. And you are bankrupting this city. And that is going to become crystal clear in the days ahead. And if this becomes a sanctuary city and you do not force this person who repeatedly turned in immigrants when he was the sheriff, you are going to be accountable. You are going to be accountable if you don't force him to respect the sanctuary of this city and respect any places that call themselves sanctuaries. This is serious business. People's lives are at stake. You kill too many people as it is. This is the most murderous police department in the country, and then you hire this guy with his reputation, and you sit here and you're all agog. You think this is just wonderful. Well, we don't. And we are the citizens. And if we get a chance, we are going to get him out. Believe me, because this is not something this city wants. This city does not want this man as head of this police department. And it wants you to be accountable to the city and to its people, not to be accountable to the Police Protective League that's paying you or subsidizing you or giving you all kinds of perks, or maybe they're threatening your families. Who knows what they're doing? But you people are in their throes. And this has to stop. You know, I don't care who's mayor and who makes the appointments. It doesn't matter. You're supposed to be an oversight board, and you need to practice that. And you need to rein in this guy, because he's going to unleash all the evils of this department, all of them. And that will be on you. Believe me. And we are going to hold you accountable. You're going to hear it.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, consent agenda items. We have items 3A through M. Would anyone like to discuss or hold or pull any items? Vice President Shields.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche? Okay, very good. Commissioner Garcia?
None, thank you.
Very good. Then I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action for items 3A through M. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now move on to agenda item number 4, regular agenda items. We have a verbal presentation relative to the Watch to Boston program with the Community Safety Partnership Bureau. And I believe I have Deputy Chief Brockway and staff. Morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
And Chief, when you have a moment, if you would please introduce everyone for the record.
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chief. Good morning, Mr. Sibley. Good morning, Ms. Yu. And of course, good morning to Carlos and to Becky and Maria. Good morning. I'm honored and privileged to be here today. As you mentioned, sir, my name is Deputy Chief Billy Brockway. I'm the proud leader of Community Safety Partnership Bureau. With me today, I have an opportunity to discuss Watts to Boston, one of the different organizations that we utilize and team with to help the community within Watts. Not just Watts, but as we expand CSPB throughout all of CSPB. So to my right is the founder of Watts to Boston, a very good friend of mine, Julie Mulvey. To her right, my right-hand man, Police Administrator to Joel Lopez. To the far right, Police Officer 3+1, our unsung hero of CSPB, Johnny Coughlin. And on the phone with us is Jennifer Alvarado. So Jennifer Alvarado is a person that we went and grew up with in CSPB. Johnny Coughlin did. She grew up in Imperial Courts. She ended up at Boston College on a full scholarship. So what I'd like to do is talk and have Johnny Coughlin talk a little bit about how he met Jennifer Alvarado, how Jennifer moved out to Boston to go to college, and how Watts to Boston became an organization, a nonprofit that we work very closely with to help kids in Watts and again throughout CSP to go to college, go to graduate school like Jennifer has, and come back and mentor and work with the kids in Watts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Johnny Coughlin for a minute and discuss how Operation Progress played out with Jennifer Alvarado.
Oh, sorry about that. Southeast Division. It was started as a scholarship program that provided police mentorship for the kids that wanted to work really hard. I met Jennifer when she was in the 8th grade. Phenomenal kid, grew up in Imperial Courts, very hardworking, great character, and was very ambitious. So we put her into her school, St. Mary's in Inglewood, where she became very successful and received a scholarship to Boston College. At that time, the Mulvey families were supporting funding Operation Progress, and then asked if there was anything else that they could do, and I said, yes, I have a girl, Jennifer Alvarado at Boston College, could you meet her? And I think Jennifer and Julie should take over from here.
So I'd like to introduce Jennifer Alvarado. So when I was a Captain 3 at CSPB, I had the opportunity to go out to Boston to watch Jennifer graduate from Boston College, to meet her family, to have some conversations on what the struggles were like moving from Los Angeles to the East Coast. I think the people that are here today, especially myself, can speak to sending my oldest daughter to school in Vermont and know how difficult it is for the first few months, and to ensure that we're leveraging our friend and relationships for people to transition so they don't come home. Those who have sent their kids away that far away, we know how difficult it is when the kids want to come home because they're scared. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to pay bills. The everyday events that we take for granted as we take care of our kids. So with that, I'd love Jennifer to talk a little bit about her experience with working with Johnny Coughlin and then working with Watts to Boston and how she has been successful to the point where she went to USC, got her master's degree last year, and is doing an incredibly great job of coming back and helping mentor kids from the Watts community. So Jennifer, to you.
Good afternoon to the LAPD Board of Commission, and I would also like to give a warm welcome to Jim McDonald. I'm here before you as an educated person from the community of Watts. And growing up in Watts and the Imperial Courts housing projects, I was very sheltered in this community. I always thought the alternative of my future would be on the Figueroa corridor in all transparency. That's where the Figueroa corridor begins on Imperial Highway, and it ends around Gage. So growing up and being exposed to these kinds of elements in my environment where there was violence as a constant, where there were gangs and drugs, there weren't many outcomes where I envisioned myself going to college much more across the country. But it all changed when Officer Coughlin entered my life when I was in 8th grade, attending Edwin Markham Middle School. So I was a product of the public school systems in my community. I inherently fell behind. And as I transitioned into St. Mary's Academy, I began to take my education more serious, and I developed the tools to feel confident to move forward and go to college. And that wouldn't have been made possible without the vision that Officer Coughlin had for my community. He has committed over 25 years of service in my community, has seen a lot of loss, and wanted to do something about it. So, in my opinion, Officer Coughlin has gone above and beyond his duty to protect and serve my community. He has established network opportunities and nurtured a healing community of students where now I'm not the only one in my family going to college. Now my sister is at Stonehill College, Julie Mulvey's alma mater, and we both were not able to move forward without the team of support from Watts to Boston. And I am very thankful for the opportunities presented to me. Instead of being on the Figueroa corridor, I was able to graduate on Figueroa Street from USC with my master's in public health. And now I'm employed by the California Civil Rights Department. And I wouldn't have made it this far without the support of law enforcement. I believe that Johnny Coughlin is a model for all of LAPD. He serves with his heart, and it's unfair to generalize one entire population based on mistakes. The department is not perfect, but it does have potential to improve. And I believe that Officer Coughlin is a perfect model where he has not just been complicit with the way things are, but he really is dedicated to change. And the host families with Watts to Boston, some people may argue it's white savior complex, but I really needed them. I needed the Mulveys to move forward in my educational career. I needed that support. I needed that nurture that I couldn't find on my college campus. And being 1,000 miles away from my family, it was very hard to immerse myself in a new environment. But knowing that I had a team of support, I was able to propel forward in spite of the ongoing challenges. So I encourage everyone to keep an open mind, and I encourage officers to step up as mentors. Johnny Coughlin continued to show up in many ways throughout my educational journey. I remember when I would get really good grades, we'd go out for dinner at McDonald's, and to me that was like such a highlight that my family didn't have the privilege to do or the time to dedicate to celebrate little victories. So yeah, I am indebted to the Mulvey family. They do it out of their own merit. The entire family is dedicated to bringing more of the South LA community to expose themselves to new environments, to see new parts of the country, and become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. That's how growth happens. And now I feel like it's my obligatory duty to pay it forward and continue to inspire more youth in my community who may not see college as a tangible option for a variety of reasons, but it is possible. I'm a living testament that it doesn't matter where you come from. All that matters is the effort that you put forward and what you do to get to reach those goals. And it takes a village. So I just hope that more departments model CSP, integrate officers into the community, and allow them to be community leaders. I don't think we should antagonize law enforcement for their mistakes, for not being the perfect heroes. I believe that they are here to protect and to serve the community. And so I'm just incredibly just humbled and grateful for all the educational resources. Watts to Boston continues to fundraise money And it all goes back to the community. There's also a separate fund for victims of crimes. While we may not be able to target all of the South LA youth community, um, we we are starting to create change with one student at a time, one family at a time. And for those of us who work in government, we know how slow progress and change can be, but we're doing the best we can given the resources. And hopefully, once we continue to expand, we'll be able to reach more of the South LA youth community. But we're starting with literally just, local fundraisers. So yeah, I am very grateful for the Watts Boston Foundation and all of the police officers, most of CSP officers involved. Their impact is long lasting. I have the pride of saying no one can ever take away my education. And I'm just very grateful to be here and to share my story and hopefully inspire the officers to continue to do good work, because your good work, I know, often goes unnoticed, but today I'm here to recognize all the commitment that you've done to the South LA community to improve it, to keep it safe. And yeah, thank you so much for listening and for your time.
Thank you,
And
Jennifer.
fight on.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much. We really appreciate you taking the time from the East Coast to spend a little bit of time with us and really capture everything that CSP stands for and Watts to Boston. So with the commission's approval and the chief, I'd like Julie Mulvey to say some words about her inspiration, which was all of ours, which was Jennifer Alvarado, to create Watts to Boston, and how it has expanded and how it's just started with one kid.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I am a stay-at-home mom of 5 kids, ages 17 to 26. As Coughlin said, we have always supported OP, and I knew I could do more, but I couldn't figure out how. I was raising 5 kids, and they were a little crazy. So, and it wasn't until August of 2017, my oldest son also graduated that year, that I heard about Jennifer Alvarado coming to Boston College, and he asked if I could look out for her. So I picked up Jenny. We went to Target. She'd come for dinner. She'd come over and do laundry. And I started to talk to Coughlin more regularly. And my son was at Wake Forest, and I would talk to him, and I would talk to Jennifer, and I found that their struggles were so different. And so I started to understand a bit more about growing up in South LA, growing up in the projects, and I just kept feeling compelled to be able to do more and help Jennifer. And it was the end of her freshman year that she called me crying one day that she was getting kicked out of the nursing program because she got a D in anatomy, and she found out her mom was supposed to be deported. And I remember calling Jay and saying, this is not normal college stuff. She's got too much on her plate. And he said, I hope she doesn't come back to LA this summer because I don't think she'll stay at BC. So we had a family meeting, and we invited her to live with us for the summer. My husband and I helped her get a job at a camp in Boston that serves inner city youth. And her and my husband commuted to Boston every day. And I realized that I could do more and I could help more kids. So Jennifer lived with us throughout the summers and really became part of our family. She stayed with us during COVID, was feeding 8 people and in charge of IT, of the Wi-Fi. It was really fun. And so then in April of 2019 is when I officially started. And I'm a second grade teacher by trade a long time ago, stay-at-home mom, no idea what I was doing, but knew that I had what it took to make a difference. And so that is how Watts to Boston started. And I continue to help more kids. I have kids that come out, 10 to 12 kids every April to look at colleges in Boston. We look at 4 to 5 schools, and we have a day of professional development. And we've done just fun activities, bowling, Red Sox game. It was actually the Red Sox LA team against each other. So anyway, and so as Jennifer said, her younger sister Jasmine is at my alma mater. She's a junior. She is doing amazing. And I think if Jennifer hadn't been the role model for her own sister, I don't think Jasmine would have attended college as well. I see Jasmine all the time. She'll come for brunch. She loves to hang out at our house. She loves our dogs. And then there's another student at Stonehill, and we have an amazing scholar at Northeastern University in their nursing program. She's working at Mass General right now as a PCA. She also will come to my house often. So I just do this because I feel like I can. I was inspired by Officer Coughlin and Officer Ortiz because I felt like they were the ones that were doing so much, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I have resources, I can help. And so we now support over 75 kids. We really have, if you really want breakdowns, we support 33 kids from the running club. We have 6 students like Jennifer that are alum. We have 25 kids in college right now, working with 13 seniors, 10 juniors, 20 sophomores, and 17 freshmen. And by support, it can be anything from, I can send a grocery gift card if I hear that their family needs some support. For the seniors, we have somebody that helps with all their college applications, their FAFSA, stays on top of them. Once I find out they're going to school, I reach out to the schools to let them know that I'm going to be there with them to help make sure that they stay in college. 25% of first-gen college students don't stay after their first year. And Watts to Boston makes sure that we give them the support. I have a team of people who log into the kids' financial aid portals to help buffet that whole, just to make sure they get ahead, they don't get behind. There's always fees that get dumped on, and the kid goes to apply or register for classes, and they can't because they have a hold on their account. So we make sure that doesn't happen. And that's the Watts to Boston story.
It's very, very clear to myself and to everybody. I think that's here today to thank Julie and her family. It's been an inspiration for our officers. Jennifer's been an inspiration when you go into certain communities and you find out that 1% to 2% of the community actually goes to college and completes college. And to know that once Watts to Boston, some of the other organizations that we're working with, the NGOs in Watts and in South LA, we're looking at kids that are having in the high 80s acceptance rates of colleges and then completing college. So it's a ever-evolving mentoring, mentee process, but it's also about the day-to-day operations of making sure the kids know how to do their laundry, making sure the kids know how to do their FAFSAs, because that rate of 25% falling out of their freshman year, that's pretty much local numbers. But when you're 3,000 miles away, it's a lot higher number. So if it wasn't for Julie Mulvey and her family, and Johnny Coughlin, and all the other organizations that we're going to start to talk about monthly here at Commission, see how it does, as Jennifer said, it takes a community, it takes a village, and we have to make sure that we troubleshoot the best way that we possibly can with the goal of making, obviously, a safer community, but more than anything, to open up lines of communication so we can do things like this, so we can talk about Jennifer Alvarado going from Imperial Courts to USC to get a master's degree, and to talk about the relationships that we continue to build on a daily basis because we listen, which is probably the most key thing that we have to do, is listen. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I appreciate and love Julie Mulvey more than you can ever imagine, Johnny Coughlin, the rest of the CSP team, and the family that surrounds us, because today is better than yesterday, and tomorrow's gonna be better than today because of people like Julie. So we're here for any questions, but I just want to again say thank you to everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you to Julie. Thanks for Watts to Boston. Thank you for the CSP team, and again, thank you to the community and to the LAPD.
Well, Chief, thank you, and thank you for the work you do. I've known you for a long time. You've always done some very impressive work. And time flies, Officer Coughlin. I believe it was about almost a year ago when Director Sarah Bell said, I need to show you something. And she took me down to the program, and I met you, and I learned about Watts to Boston. And I couldn't believe the results you were having. And as someone said to me once, you know, if you're the best at what you do and nobody knows, you become the best kept secret in the world. So I apologize for taking so long to get you on the agenda. I wanted to be able to share this with people in a broader audience. Julie, thank you. I'll only say that if you were a second grade teacher, you do know what's going on. You do know what to do. I wouldn't say that you don't have a clue what's going on. But thank you for reaching out. This is about being a village, and really appreciate what you did in terms of taking Jennifer in. And Jennifer, thank you for your courage. I know what it's like to be in New England in the winter. I appreciate you coming back to Southern California for your graduate degree, and really appreciate that I believe you probably went to the Saul Price School of Public Policy, so fight on for your master's. And now you're paying it forward with the California Civil Rights Department, and good for you. So again, just thank everyone here for all of your hard work. If there's anything we can do to amplify that, please do not hesitate to ask us. I think it's very important. This is not about black or brown families that can't do certain things or don't want to do certain things. It is about working together and building the bridge and doing things together. And I really appreciate you all doing this, and really appreciate you, Jennifer, for sharing your story with us. I hope you'll share it with more people. And please, you're a mentor. So welcome to that elite club, and continue to pay it forward. And I'll defer to Vice President Shields for her comments.
Thank you. Thank you all for the wonderful presentation. And I echo all of President Souther's sentiments. And I'd like to do like a on-the-spot commendation for Officer Coughlin. It's such a tremendous story, and really just someone who's not willing to just be satisfied with the status quo. And that's kind of when I'd love for you and others to be, talking about this at roll calls of just being able to make a small difference on a single day may change someone's life. And so really, really want to commend you for your dedication and what Jennifer said of really going above and beyond the duty to protect and serve, and that looks in a variety of different ways. So really thank you for your vision and commitment. And thank you all for the wonderful presentation. Jennifer, so wonderful to hear your story and your story of resilience and hard work paying off. It's so good to hear that we are now getting the benefit of your work at the California Civil Rights Department. And if you're ever interested in law school, just talk to me. I'm happy to be your mentor for that process, and really here to help. I'm involved in a lot of pipeline programs from high school, college, law school, to try to get people in these types of positions of being able to see not just what the world is, but how the world can be. And so if I can ever be of service, I also want to help. But really tremendous job, and it's great to see the department really empowering our community leaders with solutions. So thank you for that. I did actually have one. Oh, please, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, just one last comment. We really do need law enforcement in our communities, and this is just evident of, the goodness that can come out of it. So as a community member, as a former resident of the Imperial Courts projects for over 18 years, we need law enforcement in our communities. And we need to double up and double down on our numbers. I know we're understaffed and under-resourced, but we really need to increase the manpower within the department to continue to create these long-lasting positive changes. So I just want to iterate the importance of having these officers in our communities. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I did have one kind of question to Deputy Chief Brockway. I know this, and I'm glad to hear that we'll be hearing these types of programs because this is one of many on your plate. But given that this one has kind of a private school focus, can you give me a little snippet about what the department does to partner with our public schools as well? Because I am a product of the public school system, and I also want to know that we are investing in the public schools as well.
Absolutely. So my previous job, I was the public engagement section coordinator. So I oversaw all of our PAMS programs, our police magnet programs, also oversaw our POPS programs, our police orientation preparation programs, as well as our cadet programs. And Giselle Espinoza has taken my place. But I know that our numbers are robust. I know we have a cadet graduation this Saturday. So we continue to funnel and make sure that we're looking at each individually, obviously, to specifically see what the needs are and what best fits for them. So we do have kids that will go to our PAMS program. There's 11 of them, the magnet schools, and we have a number of kids that go to our junior college as well. So it's just not private school. We spread the wealth for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief McDonald.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to share a little bit about Johnny Coughlin. We met about 30 years ago. He was a young copper out here from Boston and working Southeast Division, saw the need. And back home, his dad would put on golf tournaments to raise money for kids in an underprivileged, underserved part of Boston. And John looked around here to see was that being done, and he didn't see it. So he started doing golf tournaments out here to raise money for kids' scholarships in the Watts area. And that built on it, and over time he stayed with it and brought a bunch of his friends into it, raised money as they could. and then over time expanded that then to the Boston Marathon. He'd bring 40 runners from LAPD back to run against 40 Boston coppers, and each side would raise money for their individual, cities or the kids within their city in two different areas, Watts and Roxbury. And they would both send in kids to college on scholarships. And this went on, and Johnny was able to grow this to Operation Progress, and then met Julie Mulvey, and has taken it now to a level where I don't think anybody could have anticipated would be. But this is all above and beyond what he does as a good street copper as well, and serving the community there. So I take my hat off to you, Johnny, for you and your family, and for going above and beyond. We talk about community policing, and that's defined different ways by different people. But what you've done exemplifies it to the highest degree possible. So a sincere thank you for both you, your family, Julie, and the whole team behind Operation Progress. You've changed so many lives for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Kalanche.
Just want to echo everything that's been said already. Congratulations on the success of your program, the success of the students, young people from our community that are succeeding in college and in life. So it's amazing to see what working and collaboration can produce. I have a follow-up question. I think is similar to what Commissioner Shields mentioned. How are the kids selected? How are the kids identified to participate in this program?
So we draft them through investigations, community events. We have programs, an after-school program, Strive, that we put the scholars into to get them caught up academically. So we really just look to work with the willing, those who are going to commit, and also have a parental component where they get some advice on how to better support their children. So
Got it.
we can get them to these places, and then, quite frankly, all the college students have siblings, cousins, and friends in that neighborhood, so
Right.
they're packing them in.
So these are kids that participated in Operation Progress.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Well, good work. Congratulations. I would love to see more kids go to lots of different places. The world is, their oyster, basically, if they have the opportunities. It's all just having access. So
Maybe
congratulations.
something about working together. There's a foundation called the Mothers Against Murdered Children with Wanda Hawkins. And so she identifies children of mostly fathers that have been murdered. And then we go in and we send these kids to these schools. We have currently 4 at Mary Star, and they're all at 4.0s or higher. And now they're part of Watts to Boston, so.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's great. Well, congratulations again. Thank
Can
you
I just
for-
say one quick thing? One little thing that Jenny and I talk about is I have a goal that in maybe 2030 that we have a parade through Watts with LAPD and all of our kids in their college sweatshirts walking through. I tell Jay that I'm going to retire, but that's my goal.
If I may, I wanted to add, Commissioner, that what we do, we also have other programs that we work with and other program providers, whether they be, the providers that HACLA partners with, whether they be GRID, some of the other different recreational programs, our Boys and Girls Clubs, that we also work with. And so we also identify kids to be able to kind of cross-reference and plug them into different programs. So whether it be college programs like Watts to Boston or Project SOAR that you may be familiar with, that's at some of our other developments on the east side, we're always looking to figure out how to plug in kids and how to do really family wraparound kind of assessments, to find out if a kid, is dad working, is there any issues at home that we can plug them into the city's work source system, youth source system. So we're always trying to do that full family wraparound assessment to figure out where to plug them into this big village of service providers that we have at every one of our sites, because every site is unique with different providers.
So I have a similar goal to you, Julie. I'm from the Ramona Gardens Public Housing Development, and I started a nonprofit there. And our goal was 100 college graduations, which we're getting close to it, and then have like a big celebration when we have these 100 kids that graduating from college. I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Joe, we're going to have those other programs here to present as well. So thank you for the good work. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you all for the presentation. To Jennifer, thank you for sharing your story, for taking the time to be here. And I'm a big believer in context and testimony. And it's always powerful to hear from our young folks. So congratulations to you and thank you. And to the entire CSP team and all the folks involved in this program and the other programs that I know exist within and around CSP. Congratulations to you all and thank you for the great work. Jennifer mentioned, sir, that you nurtured a healing community. That's amazing to hear, and really is what I highlighted here in my little notebook as maybe as something that I know CSP works towards, but really figuring out what does that mean to a person to feel that and to say that, especially in a public stage like this, and what does it look like for an officer to create that, and one, maybe the addicting smile you have, sir, and just the energy that you present is amazing, and so I thank you for that, and let's explore, see how we can turn that potentially into structure and introduce it in other spaces. Again, I'm a big believer in the CSP model and what it does, and figuring out how the culture of CSP can be shared throughout other departments as well. So thank you all.
Roger, thank you very much, sir. I just want to again say thank you to Julie, to John, to Joel, to everybody here. With your permission, sir, we're still not going to give Johnny the days off he wants, but because we're going to have to shrink his head after today. To Jennifer, thank you. You know, you're our hero and our inspiration, so I appreciate you more than you imagine. Welcome back, Chief. That's it.
Well, thank you again, everyone. Jennifer, thank you. If you're ever here downtown, come and see us, and just keep up the good work. We look forward to hearing more successes as they come along. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to agenda item 4B, a verbal presentation relative to the overview of the discipline process. I have Deputy Chief from Kunis and his staff. Okay. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Commissioner. Commissioner Shields, Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Calanche, Chief McDonald, Florence. Good morning, Django. So today, Deputy Chief Mike Kunis, I oversee Professional Standards Bureau, and within Professional Standards Bureau is Internal Affairs Division. Today, I've brought with me Captain Kirk Kelly. He's the Commanding Officer of Internal Affairs, and Captain Dave Wang. Today, they will be providing you an overview of the discipline process. We've provided a short PowerPoint presentation to highlight the critical aspects of this complex system. So I will turn it over to Captain Kelly to discuss.
Thank you, sir. First of all, tough act to follow. When things go wrong, I guess that's when we'll step in here. So sorry to bring the room down. But first of all, I just want to say that our system is based on transparency at its foundation and accountability. We do our best to conduct fair, objective, and thorough investigations so that we can have that as a department. So what we've decided to do to explain that process, if we go to the next slide, is to look at the life cycle of a complaint. So we've broken that down into 5 different phases. And this is going to be broad-based and very general in its discussion, but we'll break it down into each one of these 5 phases, beginning with an initiation. So if we can go to the next slide. So the department takes all public complaints. Anything that a member of the public wants to make a complaint about, whether it be a department policy procedure, whether it be specific actions of an employee, we will accept it no matter what the context of that is. And we accept all public complaints as our policy. Those can come in, it doesn't have to be in person. It can be via email or on the department website. Oh, thank you. Or it could be phone calls, faxes. We have a helpline set up. We have the written correspondence, so any mail that is sent to the department. We also have the Inspector General's referrals. If someone reaches out to the Inspector General's office and has concerns, The complaint can be initiated that way and also in person many times at radio calls and contact with the police. They can come to the station, any station, no matter where it is. We embrace every complaint, no matter what it could be. The second portion of that complaint can come from the department. So if there is a policy violation that is observed by a department employee, this would include things like, out of policy use of forces, other conduct out of policy pursuits that come through the system and are determined to be out of policy. The department will initiate that complaint against the employee. We do use a model of progressive discipline. So we start with, typically depending on the egregiousness of the violation, we'll start and give the employee a chance to correct their ways and move on. So there's no here about our complaints that Captain Wong.
Thank you. By the way, next to my right here, we have Sergeant Jerry Contreras. He handles our mediation and ACRs. He works under PSB. So if I can direct your attention to the pie chart to the right, as you can see, 4,000 in 2023, we took 4,086 complaints. 3,532 of those complaints, or 86%, were generated by the public or the citizens of Los Angeles. Coming a distant second and third, we have 381 complaints that were initiated by other department employees. Those are usually the workplace investigation section that would handle complaints from there. And then 360 complaints were department initiated, and Captain Kelly just went over those types. To the bar graph on the right, so in 2023, the department had approximately 8,970 employees. Of those sworn employees, 6,063 sworn employees were accused in a complaint investigation at some point. And 436 were sustained. As far as like the civilians that work for the department, numbers are much lower. Of the 2,634 sworn or civilian employees with the LAPD, 333 had allegations against them or were accused at one point, and 56 were sustained. Next slide, please. Okay. The types of allegations that we get most, these are the 5 most frequent allegations. You have neglect of duty. We had 3,261. Those are allegations where an officer fails to do something that's that should have done or followed policy. Examples of those would be failing to take a report, failing to give or provide a business card, failing to get a supervisor when they become aware of misconduct. We also have, when a supervisor gets there, one of the most frequent ones is they fail to take a complaint when they become aware of misconduct. The next most common is unbecoming conduct. Now, unbecoming conduct has a very wide range that falls under there. What doesn't fall under the other specific categories, like DUI related and the others, would fall under unbecoming conduct. And that's where the employee's actions would reflect negatively upon the department. An example of that would be posting an inappropriate photo or message on social media, or inappropriately accessing department computers for personal use. Next, we have bias policing. That accounts for 1,495. And then we have discourtesy. That accounts for 1,381. And that would be, cursing. A lot of times you have complainants that may not be able to articulate, but they would say their tone of voice was mean, or they looked at me wrong. That would fall under discourtesy. Next slide, please.
Okay, so at this point, we've discussed how a complaint is initiated. The next phase would be classification. So as the complaint comes into the system, we have a system called the complaint management system. It is a useful computer system to track every complaint that comes in. Every one is assigned its own little serial number, beginning with the year and then Like you say, we have about 4,000 complaints a year, so it'll get a serial number attached to it so that we can track it. Those complaints, they come into, under PSV is the complaint classification section. They'll look at it and determine the nature of the complaint. If it rises to a certain level of complexity or department resources are going to be required that are significant, it'll come to internal affairs for the investigation. If it's not, say it's something like an officer doesn't show up to court when they were supposed to, or doesn't qualify as scheduled to, it will go back to the division or the specialized unit for investigation. So they'll handle those. The percentages over the last 4 years, it looks like about 64 of the complaints end up going back to the division of the officer, where the officer is assigned for investigation, and about 36% come back to internal affairs for investigation. So that's once the classification occurs. There's also one note on here regarding Senate Bill 2 that passed a couple of years ago here. Within PSB, we have a serious misconduct reporting unit. If it complies with SB 2, there's a certain number of allegations, which we may get into a little later, that rise to the level of being notified to post. Without getting too deep into Senate Bill 2 as it stands now, an additional oversight layer was added when Senate Bill 2 was passed by the state, so that Post can now review our complaint investigations and determine if in their investigation or their look at our investigation can determine if that officer should no longer be a police officer or certified to be a police officer in the state. So we may talk about that in a minute. So once the investigation occurs, so the complaint has now been assigned to a division or to internal affairs, in this case, for investigation. This represents the bulk of our work. A vast amount of work goes into the investigations that take place. The investigator, they're going to review the complaint. Now, one thing that's important to take from this too is that if a complainant, let's say a member of the public calls the police arrive at the location and they believe that the officers did not do a thorough investigation at the time of the radio call. The officers were discourteous when they were there, and then they lied in a police report. Say they come up with those 3 different allegations. Those are broken into 3 separate allegations against the officers. So just because one of them may be proven to not have occurred throughout the investigation doesn't throw out the other one. So let's say they did do a thorough investigation as determined by the investigation, and they didn't lie in any reports or anything like that, but they were discourteous when they contacted the member of the public. It'll be that one finding can be sustained while the other ones will be determined, and we'll talk about the adjudication of these complaints in a moment, but each one of those is separately allocated. One of the strategies, keeping in mind that this is an administrative investigation, depending on if there is a criminal facet, we do break into a criminal team and an administrative team, but the investigation is typically compelled interviews. To be a police officer obviously comes with a certain level of importance. They need to be, during the course of the investigation, they'll actually be forced to give a statement to internal affairs. If they refuse to discuss the incident with us, they'll be guilty of insubordination, and typically they'll be terminated as an employee. So that's an important facet of our investigation. Obviously, we pull all the evidence. Body-worn video is a major component of our investigation these days. Since the institution of it, we are able to review all the body-worn video. We get evidence from independent sources. It's almost the same trail as a criminal investigation. We'll go out to the scene. We'll see if there's surveillance video. Even though the allegations may be strictly administrative in nature, we'll still go out and obtain surveillance video or witness statements from people in the public. We'll canvass just the same way a criminal investigation would take place. And again, what's important to realize is that many times internal affairs gets accused of or discussed as being a disciplinarian, and that we're out to get people or what have you. Really, at its core, our role is an independent fact finder. All we're doing is going out, we're interviewing the parties involved, we're gathering the evidence, and we're producing a report. We don't determine guilt or innocence. That's for the adjudication phase, which we'll get into next. So the adjudication phase actually has 5 phases within it. The first of them is, so the report at this point has been completed, the investigation's been conducted. It's important to mention that although we have a 1-year statute, once we're notified of the allegations against the officer, there are certain provisions where that can be told and postponed, but those are very specific. Typically, it's a one-year statute of limitations. Our goal is to try to get the investigations done within 5 months. This is hugely difficult, and as much as we try, that it is very difficult for us to accomplish that goal, but it does remain a goal at this time to do that within 5 months for all parties involved. Once the investigation is done, it goes back to the command. So the commanding officer of the involved employee will receive that investigation. They'll review it. At that point, they'll determine if in their review, if it should be sustained, and we'll get to the categories, or unfounded perhaps, or insufficient evidence to adjudicate, or if the complaint could also be non-disciplinary. So they'll write up a rationale for that decision. Let's say, again, referring to our earlier incident, while they may have found that the failing to conduct a thorough investigation was unfounded, the discourtesy was sustained. They'll now look at that and look at an officer's employment history, which we track through our Teams 2 system. They'll be able to see any prior instances, if there was previous instances where he or she was discourteous, and what that penalty was. So back to the progressive discipline model, if perhaps in the past they had gotten an admonishment or an official reprimand for it, the next phase would typically be suspension days, where they'll be placed off without pay as a penalty for that conduct. So once that rationale is completed and written down, it goes to, and again, that commanding officer is typically a captain or a civilian equivalent. It will then go to the bureau commanding officer. So that will typically be a commander or deputy chief or their civilian equivalent. And then the entire investigation and the entire rationale for the adjudication will be reviewed by that commander or deputy chief. And then they can disagree with that penalty, they can disagree with the finding, and at that point, it's called a military endorsement, but that can be changed by that bureau level commanding officer. So let's say back to our example, our officer's been discourteous, they've had prior instances, they're looking at a 2-day suspension for that. Well, now if the bureau commanding officer looks at that and says, no, the violation in this case was, let's say, so egregious that I want to increase that penalty. It wasn't just a run-of-the-mill like rudeness. It went to a higher level. That commanding officer can then increase that penalty at that point, and they'll write up a rationale for their decision on that. At that point, the next phase is that it would go to be reviewed by our Professional Standards Bureau. We have a review and evaluation section. They review every single complaint that the department does. So of those 4,000 complaints, every one of them comes across their desk. They look at it for thoroughness. They look at it for completeness. They're not involved in the investigation whatsoever. They'll just look at it with fresh, independent eyes and decide that if there's more investigation that needs to be done, or if this investigation fits all of our criteria, it'll move on to the next level, which will be the presentation to the chief of police. In this case, when a complaint is sustained, every Wednesday we have meetings with the chief and with some of the staff, including the deputy chief and commander of Professional Standards Bureau. Both myself and Captain Wong are there representing internal affairs. We'll have the advocate's office and the city attorneys who later present these cases at Board of Rights, if we get to that, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Review and evaluation section is also present. They also act as a role, they keep records of every complaint that comes through. So we call them R&E. R&E will also give a track record for what historically has been what we would say the going rate for this type of offense. So they'll look at it in the context of what occurred and just decide if that is past practice for the department is to give 2 days or 4 days, whatever the case may be, and they'll have a recommendation as well. And one of the, at the opening of this, I talked about transparency. The Office of the Inspector General is also present for that and part of the discussion to give their input as to, because they have access to all of our investigation at every stage and every step in the process. The Inspector General is present and can weigh in on concerns that they may have and address those. They'll be able to present those to the chief. So the person most knowledgeable with the investigation, and I'm sorry, I've kind of fallen behind here. So on the presentation, the internal affairs presenter, who typically is very familiar with the case, has reviewed all the body-worn video and has a good grasp on what it is, presents the case. And again, that presentation is a very key moment of this, because that's when the chief, who is the ultimate disciplinarian for the department, gets to look at all the materials and weigh in on whether, and at that point, he can even change and say, well, I mean, I don't know that this is the best example, but to say it shouldn't be sustained, he can even change that at that setting, or he can look at this incident and he can either go higher or lower than the 4 days in this case that Bureau has approved. He can bring it back down to 2 days. Also, what's important is the office that is in charge of that, the division would be there to also weigh in as well if they feel like it's a bigger, if maybe it's a discourtesy is a booming problem within that area. They can say, hey, we really need to be address this because it's been an ongoing problem within our office. So that's something that we would look at. So going back to these types of adjudications, just really quickly, when it's disciplinary, we have sustained, and word on transparency as well is to say, as this complaint has worked its way through and it's finally adjudicated by the chief, there'll be a letter that's sent back to the complainant that says, okay, regarding allegation that the officers did not conduct a thorough investigation, that was deemed to be unfounded, say in this case, and that would mean that the investigation, the act complained of did not occur in the manner described. So that was thrown out. Discourtesy, the allegation of discourtesy was sustained in this case, and that did occur. We explain that in the letter as well, so they can understand what this terminology means. You see a couple other categories there. Exonerated means that it did occur, but that was the appropriate behavior for the officer at that particular time. There's two that are very similar here, which are insufficient evidence to adjudicate and not resolved. Insufficient evidence means that somewhere along the way, a key witness didn't cooperate, or there was just not sufficient evidence to really come to a conclusion. However, not resolved just means that although we had all the evidence presented throughout the investigation, it's like one person's word versus another, and there's no evidence to go either way. One note that I missed that I want to include is that when we look at the sustaining of allegations, we use the preponderance standard, which is basically 51% in the favor of it did occur, then we would go sustained. So anything that tips the scales in the favor of the act occurring or not, depending on, would be the weight. It doesn't, criminally, you say beyond any doubt, this would be a much lower threshold. So even though there may be doubt over whether it occurred or not, that's the standard that has been used for these administrative investigations. Going on to the penalty guide. So I mentioned like 2 days or 4 days based on a discourtesy and a previous track record. We do have a penalty guide which has existed for years. It is something that describes many examples of misconduct that have occurred throughout the history of the department. And it comes up with a recommendation, basically a base recommendation for if this is the first offense, the penalty would be X. Second offense, obviously it elevates and so forth. What's important to note on this is that this is agreed upon with the league. So the police union weighs in on this. This is not something that the department unilaterally comes up with. Internal Affairs didn't come up with it. There is a mutual discussion that occurs and work together to do that. We are in a phase where that, and I believe within a very short period of time, an updated version of that will occur, which is important as trends change. It's important for the Internal Affairs to adapt. So we are going to be looking at a new penalty guide coming up soon. But one of the issues that's come up is consistency of punishment. And I know that there's, when some of the circumstances of a complaint come to light, what's important to note is that these are confidential investigations. So although we do have a high degree of transparency, that may be within the department and with the Inspector General's office, but because these are confidential and protected by law, it's hard to really give out all of the details that occur. So one thing, many times we've seen that there's kind of a misperception that occurs regarding consistency of punishment. What's published in our penalty guide, or not penalty guide, but when penalty is administered, we put out a monthly report that will have that information. It'll say the same thing, but one person gets, an admonishment where another gets days off. I think what's difficult is to look at each situation independently, which sometimes you can't get, but this penalty guide shoots with the goal to make those punishments as consistent as possible. So that's something that we really strive for. So moving on to the next phase, Captain Wong.
So the admin appeal, the appeal process is a function that's conducted by the advocate section. They're made up of both sworn and the city attorney. They fall under PSB. I know everybody thinks Internal Affairs does everything. That's not true. We don't do everything. We just collect the facts. One of the appeal process is the admin appeal. It is for paper penalties, such as official reprimands or admonishments, adjudications of not resolved, also penalties of 22 days or less where the officer admits to doing the act, however, he is challenging the penalty. The admin appeal has one hearing examiner. It's a civilian. The decision of the hearing examiner is not binding. The chief has the option to either accept or to go with his own prior or change whatever penalty that he thinks is justified. Currently, we have about 300 admin appeals pending. Our next appeal process is the Board of Rights. This can be directed by the Chief of Police. The Chief of Police can give a penalty of 22 days, no more. Anything else would be recommended for a Board of Rights for termination. The officer can opt for a Board of Rights to challenge any type of decision or adjudication. All penalties, including days off, where the officer can appeal the guilt or the penalty, including demotions. The board consists of 3 members. They have a choice of choosing 2 sworn and 1 civilian as members of the board, or choosing 3 civilian members. Since the 3 civilian member board has been instituted, 100% of all boards since then have been civilian boards. The decision of the Board of Rights is binding, it's final. No one can override that. And the board can increase or decrease or change the adjudication from what the chief had recommended. Next slide. So the statistics by rank, this is looks like a 5-year average from 2018 to 2023. For command staff officers, that would be captains and above, there were 262 complaints. 23 were sustained, which is about 8.8%. Rank and file would be lieutenants and below. During that period of time, we had 17,832 complaints. 2,091 were sustained, making up 11.7%. 4-year average from 2020 to 2024, LAPD has approximately 1.25 million public contacts. Public complaints average, 4-year average is about 3,100 per year. 135 of those are sustained, and 7 have resulted in Board of Rights. Again, as Captain Kirk Kelly had mentioned, Internal Affairs averages about 36%. We handle about 36% of the complaints, and that has gone down from 2020. We handled about 41%. I think for 2024 year to date, we're at about 33%. So it has gone down, and that's part of our process now. It's the second half of the year. More of the complaints are going to chain of command due to staffing issues. Next slide. For transparency. So we do publish, PSB publishes a disciplinary penalty report each month. It is posted on the department LAN as well as lapdonline.org. Now all the confidential information is taken out, but it'll give you the type of penalty and the type of allegation as well as the penalty. As Captain Kelly mentioned earlier, a letter is sent to the complainant at the end of the disposition and the adjudication of the complaint. Also, we do have a 5-month goal, and if a complaint is not completed within 5 months, the complainant is sent a letter saying that, hey, it's not being done, please be patient, it's going to be taking longer. Also, on the department LAN and the LAPD online for the public, there is a PSB generates a year-end review of complaint statistics, and again, that is posted on both LAN and LAPD online. And the department does comply with Penal Code Section 832.7 and the exemptions, and that's has to do with confidentiality of personnel records of peace officers, and there are certain exemptions that allows those complaints or the information to be released. Oversight. The Inspector General's office has oversight over internal affairs, or PSV. They have full access to all complaints, any evidence that we collect, body-worn video, any compelled statements, they have full access to everything. So prior to us briefing the chief of police for signings, we have a pre-signing discussion with PSB. The Inspector General's office also has a presence there, and we go over the investigation prior to signings, and that gives the Inspector General the opportunity to voice any concerns or issues that they may have with the investigation thus far. Sometimes we will go back and do supplemental investigations to address those concerns. They also attend the chief signings, and again, they can address or voice any concerns that they may have. They can also conduct complaint biopsies and assessments based on public's request after a complaint has been completed.
So there we've walked through the process, and we welcome any questions you may have for us.
Well, thank you all for a very thorough and comprehensive presentation. I'm sure this enlightened a lot of folks today, and we really appreciate it. I'm going to go last with my comments or questions. I'm going to defer to Vice President Shields.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. Hopefully that PowerPoint will be available on our link to our website so that we have access to that. Just a couple questions, and I know this was, a lot of information to try to digest, in a shorter period of time, but this is kind of going to be starting our kind of discussions about the disciplinary process generally. So I really appreciate just kind of having a foundation of like where we're at and having people both within the department and outside of the department understand what the department does for this. I think, there was at one point you were talking about how, sometimes an investigation will go to the division versus IA. If anything does trigger an SP2 type of like a serious misconduct, would that stay with IA or would that go back to the division, or does it differentiate?
So when all the complaints are reviewed, we have a classifications unit within Professional Standards Bureau and a Senate Bill 2 team. It's 4 sergeants that review every complaint that comes in. If there are cases that allege serious misconduct, that case would most likely stay with Internal Affairs Division because of the complexities. The initial intake sometimes doesn't give the complainant a lot of information. It takes an initial investigation, which our folks are more equipped to handle, to at least get that complaint tracking in the right direction. But yes, it would stay with Internal Affairs.
Great.
And just for clarity too, and SB2, just for the public's knowledge, those serious allegations would consist of dishonesty, abuse of power, physical abuse, sexual assault, demonstrating bias, acts that violate the law and are egregious, participation in a law enforcement gang, failure to cooperate with an investigation into potential police misconduct, or failure to intercede in the use of force.
Wonderful, thank you. And I know that the LAPD has a different standard than some other departments in terms of what types of complaints that are accepted. And I understand that the LAPD has a very kind of low barrier to entry, meaning, and you mentioned how, you'll accept complaints from a variety of different locations and areas and all things like that. And that also includes anonymous complaints, right? So no one has to associate their name to it, because some departments actually don't allow the use of, anonymous, or some will say you have to come up in person and show me here and then I'll take a complaint. But the number of complaints that the department gets is also associated with the very low entry or barrier to make a complaint. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. One other thing I had, or a question I had, was about the adjudication process. When it goes to the commanding officer for adjudication, do you ever kind of identify whether there's any potential allegation or claim that, say, some of the commanding officers were also involved, would there be a way to kind of like shield them, like almost like a conflict of interest, so that a commanding officer who is somehow implicated would not be involved in the adjudication process?
So prior to the completion, if we have complaints, which we have many, where you have a command that's involved, you may have lieutenants or captains that are involved as well, then we'll repurpose that complaint. We'll maybe have the Bureau oversee the complaint and then have the Bureau adjudicate. So there's many options that you can go, but we would never give a complaint back for adjudication if we have captains and even lieutenants involved in that complaint somehow. It just wouldn't make sense.
And at some point, it would be nice to know, I saw the list of like how many, what are the big categories of complaints that are typically filed, and also to understand a little bit about, you know, how many of those are sustained. Because a lot of times we get the criticism that the department has never sustained a bias policing complaint. Is that accurate?
Actually, just recently, in fact, in the last week, we've had a Board of Rights where there was 2 findings for sustained on an allegation of bias policing. So they are very few and far between, especially if you look, I believe it was the 3rd most common complaint. I think the difficulties that you have in proving that, even with our lower threshold than we would with the preponderance standard, is to say that you have to be in the mind of the officer, or there has to be such a litany of facts that would explain the fact that, you know, this officer only stops people of a certain race, say, or gender, whatever the allegation would sustain. It's a very difficult threshold to prove when it comes to the misconduct standard. So it just, you'd almost have to be in the mind, or there has to be an admission by the officer that they do so.
And are there times that, say, someone from the community would make a biased policing complaint, and that's the full extent of the complaint, but when the department actually looks at it, it's like, well, it's hard to prove biased policing, but there was discourtesy or other things like that.
Yeah, and a note on that, and I think as we start this discussion about, you know, updating the discipline process and making some changes to the existing system and adapting, I would say, and one of the reasons that Sergeant Contreras is here is this ACR, called our Alternative Complaint Resolution Program, and also our mediation. So many times what we've seen is that a allegation of biased policing really is a misperception by the part of the person making the complaint as to why the person was stopped or why the decision was made by the officer. And many times, especially in the heat of when the police are called, obviously things have gone terribly wrong, right? So in the heat of the moment, when the complainant or the person who called the police is there dealing with the officer, emotions are generally very high, and they're dealing, and there's an argument about who's right and who's wrong. It's not a good time to sit down and try to explain the nuances of policing or the nuances of the law when it comes to whatever the issue being discussed, or why the violation occurred. One of the things that I really, if I could beg for anything, I would say, as a department, we need to expand the alternative complaint system and the mediation program. What this does is it takes the complainant and the officer who's been accused, it sits them down in a room, typically with the commanding officer or another person within the department that can mediate that. In fact, well, I want to have the expert talk about it. Sergeant Carreras, you want to kind of describe briefly the ACR
Yes,
process?
of course. So we have 2, alternative complaint resolution and mediation. So they're virtually the same requirements to do either one. The only difference would be ACR is much more efficient, is done on the spot by the field sergeant. So essentially they meet with the complainant, they discuss other allegations, ensure there's nothing that's serious misconduct or criminal allegations that we would of course investigate. So then they do the ACR right there in the spot. It gives folks an opportunity to provide the historical context of why, you know, they feel a certain way about us, and it also allows us to give an explanation as to why we do things. As you gentlemen and ladies know, most of our complaints stem from either disagreement, a lack of proper explanation on either side, or minor discourtesy on either side. I think ACR presents the perfect platform to, let's just get to the bottom of this, let's be adults, let's talk. Mediation, I would say, it's hard to ask me which one I like more, as they ask me which job I like the most. Mediation, I believe, is much more effective. It's our partnerships with the city attorney's office, and they utilize professional mediators. They're amazing. They have to have a certain amount of hours as mediators. My partner, Jack Kajajian with the city attorney's office, he does an amazing job. They're not one-sided. He has folks from both parties, usually two mediators, and they meet with the complainants and the officers. Honestly, I mean, there is a way to quantify ACR mediation. You could multiply investigative hours times how much they paying folks. But you absolutely, I'm 100% proponent of this. You cannot quantify the effects on the community. We have a over 90% satisfaction rate by community members and officers. And it's just amazing. A lot of these folks recommended to their fellow community members. It's been reported back to me that when supervisors present the ACR or the mediation, community members say, oh yeah, I've heard about that, I want to do that. But I cannot emphasize enough what that does for our community, restorative justice and procedural justice.
You know, if I can just add, so when, about 4 years ago, we started, or about 2 years ago, the bias policing unit because of the number of complaints that come in relation to bias policing. And one of the goals was to do exactly what Jerry's done a phenomenal job. Jerry, if you can recite the mediation and ACR numbers have gone up hundreds of percents. And the key on that is, as he mentioned, is the relationship with the community, getting the community and the police together to break down those barriers and to increase the trust and communication. This all stems because of minor discourtesies that lead into, you know, a community member not liking to be told something, then our officers not responding professionally or not responding appropriately. But he's been able to, along with the rest of the team at PSB, to be able to bring the groups together with the people that have the skill sets to bridge the gaps, to diffuse situations, and to make it a very positive experience for those involved. And it's great to hear that we have community members that know about the program, that recommend the program to other folks. And ideally, we like to have police contacts where we're not in this arena, but they happen and the numbers, you know, still come up, but we're tying people together and having the positive interactions. So just compliments to Jerry and the team for doing that. It's a lot of work, but it's well worth it. You know, every one person creates 10 and we keep multiplying. So great work on that, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And the number for 2023, we had 87 complaints that were disposed through the ACR process and 40 that were through mediation. So the numbers, again, are small, but we're hoping to increase those numbers. And as the chief said, you know, every one that was successful, that hopefully distributes throughout the community when they talk to each other about, no, they didn't do it because of this. Here was the reason that they stopped you, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it may be small, but those are the building of bridges that we need. And so if there's a way to expand that, I would be very supportive of that. One last kind of area of questions I had was about you mentioned kind of like after the adjudication is like the outcome, right? Whether it's progressive discipline or days off. In that continuum, is there ever a place where there's actual discussions of like, you know what, you were discourteous or whatever, like, you know, have additional training on procedural justice or almost something like community service, like, because having a couple people stay home for a couple of days, that just kind of creates more bitterness than anything else. Is there any kind of learning from it, kind of similar to what you're hearing from like ACR and mediation, where they're walking away from the process with some additional knowledge?
I would say not formally so, but it is. I mean, it's a long traumatic process, right? I described it. We have a year statute of limitations, so whatever this complaint is, it typically hangs over the officers' heads, if you will, for a long period of time. As it goes through when the commanding officer makes their determination, typically they'll meet with the employee and say, hey, I'm finding you sustained on this one allegation. I'm giving you a 2-day suspension. So that meeting, it takes place there. As that process continues, there's actually one thing that I didn't discuss because, again, this is kind of a generic topic, general discussion, but there is a process which is called a Skelly response. And this is an established procedure where the employee has an opportunity. Now, the chief has made his judgment, and he's decided it's a sustained 4 days. The employee has the opportunity to write a written statement that says, this, you know, typically acknowledging their mistake and saying, you know what, I was having a terrible day, or, I mean, not that that's an excuse, but, there's some mitigating factor, whatever it may be, that the employee can describe. That goes back to the chief who's made that determination. And at that point, if the chief feels like, and not so much a community service, but if the message has been sent that this behavior is not acceptable and there was some mitigating factor, the chief can then, after reading that employee's plea, then bring it down. He can't increase it, but he can bring it down or keep it the same. But
Commissioner, if I can add too, with Chief McDonald and now, and looking at that specific example, along with search and seizure and some of these other, things that we see, now is a good time, to reevaluate, the punitive aspect of this. And is it more training based? Is it more information? These are complex topics. Search and seizure is very complex. And so can we provide that employee, I think, a better avenue with better training, better documentation, and give that employee a chance to rehabilitate instead of giving them 2 days off, right? Every employee's teams is different, and some may have multiple search violations, but now is a good time in the restructuring and the discussions with Chief McDonald, the working with the LAPPL. I think everyone's coming to the table and looking at better ways to teach our men and women out there, because it is a very complex job. And the better we can be at informing and not being punitive in the discipline world, which hence the change of the penalty guides and having avenues for training and things like that, more training led, would be positive for everyone. And I think our officers would even gain from that to provide that in there. So we are looking at that, working with the chief. Now is a great time. We're having to look at many different things with, charter change and stuff that we can all maybe come together and come up with a better avenue to better equip our folks out there with more knowledge, I think, to do their job more effectively.
Excellent. No, that's great to hear, and we just want better and good outcomes for the public. And so, whatever will help get that result is what the areas that we should be exploring. So, thank you so much for that great presentation. I'll stop asking questions.
Okay. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you for the information. It was a lot, right? And I know this is something that we, as a commission, have been very interested in, and we'll probably have more follow-up questions. Some of the questions have been asked by Commissioner Shields that I had. One of them was on the bias policing, because we hear about, the numbers, right, that are actually sustained. So I had a question about that. I also have questions about RIPA, how this connects to like the RIPA data. And then just kind of thinking about how discipline is like this delicate balance of like being very responsive to our community, to our residents of the city, but also this feeling of fairness, right? That we keep hearing that officers feel that the discipline system isn't fair. I understand it a little bit more now, just thinking about like how we just publish the penalties and someone can assume, well, I got 3 days for the same offense and that person didn't get any or got one, right? So I'm just thinking like, how can we be a little bit more transparent without, giving up all, confidential information. So just thinking about that, thinking about, do we provide our officers with that information about how how these decisions are made and how the progressive discipline happen. I just feel like the more information that's out there, or maybe not. I think sometimes people want to hear what they want to hear, right? But are we proactive, I guess I would say, in providing this information so that we squash, rumors? Because a lot of it is kind of just, you hear something and then it just kind of develops into something else. So those are the things that I think we're trying to balance. How do we have this system of integrity, but that also comes across as like super fair to our employees and to the public, right? So I know this delicate balance. So yeah, those are like my comments, questions, kind of areas of concern. Yeah.
Well, one note, you mentioned the RIPA data. When we have the bias policing unit conducting those complaints, that was something that changed as that data was now introduced. Before, we had stop data that was less complete or less thorough than the RIPA data. With the RIPA data and the use of the dashboard, what comes at the end of that investigation that covers all of the circumstances. There is an evaluation of that officer's stop history when it comes to those factors that are mentioned in the investigation. So that was an interesting footnote as RIPA data became, that was within the last year, we started to incorporate that data into the bias policing complaints just for a little deeper dive into the nature, just to make sure that we weren't seeing that actually occur. So we are implementing that. And second, to your point, yeah, it's very difficult to balance. I will say from, I've been an officer for 27 years almost now. I had never, while I have had complaints filed against me in the past, never anything sustained. I had very little contact with the discipline process. So within a little more than a year now that I've been in internal affairs, it was a whole new world to me. And I see it as kind of coming in with a new set of eyes to a system, which, obviously I'm aware of all the concerns, is to say, now I see complaints come through and I see officers in different parts of the city making the same mistake, whether it be like the chief mentioned searches when it comes to changing case law regarding the transportation of marijuana, a subtle nuance of police work, which is highly complicated. You see it happening in one area of the city. To get that message out there to the commands, to all the commands, we work through our partners like at OCPP to put out notices, or PSB can put out notices to the department, but it's important for the officers to be aware that occurs, and sometimes it gets lost in everything else that our department puts out there. So that is definitely an area of improvement that we've discussed.
Commissioner, if I can add to that. So one of the things that we realize is it's no secret we have new folks in new positions. We have brand new sergeants, we have new lieutenants, we have new captains, we have new chiefs, commanders. There's a lot of folks in various positions that are new. As demonstrated, this is a complex area. There's a lot going on. Not one complaint is the same for every employee. But what we can do better as a team, as an LAPD team, is to provide more insight, to spend more time with our officers, to explain what we can about why someone is getting a sustained OR, a sustained 2 days. It depends on teams. It depends on history. There's a lot of factors in play. This isn't just a service of a complaint. You're getting 2 days and then move on to the next area. It's critical for every employee that is dealing with the discipline. But what we can do better as a team is to spend more time explaining. Spend more time training is what we're all trying to do, is spend more time getting out to the areas, getting out to the field, getting out to the officers in the field, and explain the process of how this all takes place. Explain this adjudication process, and then ask the captains when they're serving or have to serve that employee with something, is to spend a half hour with that employee explaining. The more knowledgeable they become, the more knowledgeable our command staff become, the better this perception of a lack of understanding will be. We've realized real quick that that's an ongoing problem. Even internally, sometimes it's hard to go through this and explain and understand and wire things. There's so many moving parts to this. But if we just spend a little bit extra time, at least from my seat, from my opinion, and spend more time talking about it with our employees and explain the penalty guide, why is this different than you, or it can go a long way, and then free up some of that discussion of it's not fair, it's not this, right? So just spend a little bit more time working through that.
Because I know we have a lot more questions, but I think this will be my last one for now, as I kind of soak in a lot of this information. The other was mentioned about how sometimes this feeling, officers have this feeling of, I have this looming over my head, right? Because it takes so long to adjudicate. So I appreciate these other opportunities to adjudicate things on the spot or in a faster, way. So would love to see how we can integrate that a little bit more. And then secondly, my experience in working in the community and working with young people was that there wasn't that type of and I don't want to say it's adjudication, but sometimes young people at 16, 17, 18-year-olds sometimes all feel indignant that I didn't do anything wrong, the cops stopped me, and many times maybe they didn't do anything wrong, but a lot of the time they just want to be heard, right? So I'm wondering if there are any thoughts, or would love to see have a conversation about how we kind of do something like that, but with younger people, right? Where they're not usually they're not filing complaints, they're not going to take the steps to file complaints, or follow through in the process, but then they get this negative interaction with law enforcement that then lingers on probably forever. So I'm just wondering if there are opportunities, and maybe I'll follow up with you, to address these like issues with like, especially young men, right? That get stopped for whatever reason, or because they live in a neighborhood where there's a lot more crime, so they're more prone to be stopped. So I'll let you answer, because, yeah.
Yes, of course. So the reason we've had increase in ACR mediation is just awareness. It simply comes down to that. In a 2-year sample, we had ACRs went up by 300%. How do we do that? Awareness. We created a team of professors, instructors for the Professional Standards Bureau, where we go around teaching various department entities like supervisor school, IA school, watch commander school, recruit classes. So we're able to raise awareness amongst our own folks. It would be good to try to raise awareness with the community, maybe finding a way to broadcast it through them, maybe leverage our partnerships with our officers that are out there face to face with them and refer that to them. But definitely, I think that would be
I have some thoughts.
constructive for the community.
Yeah, I think we need to get this information out to the community-based organizations that are working with community members so that they know, like, we always say, like, you should expect, first-class service from law enforcement, right? Because we're here to serve the community. And if you're not receiving it, we don't want to go through this whole, like, complaint process where it just takes up a lot of our resources. But if we could resolve issues on the spot, and we have these systems, then we need to let the public know that they exist.
Commissioner, we're also available to attend community meetings as well. I know you used to run a program when I was at Newton where we'd switch roles. You'd send officers in your shoes, I think, or maybe the name is different, but you would reverse roles in the sense of the community member, the officer, and you'd have some dialogue and talk about different perceptions and things. So there's avenues I think we can explore working with various community groups, and everyone, at the table is available to do that.
I'll follow up. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you. Also have a lot of questions, but I'll try to keep it just short because I think this is a long conversation. But really, I'd like to understand a little bit more on what type of complaints command staff receive versus the rank and file, just to understand the difference between the 8.8 and the 11%. And then a question here is, in the academy, there's a lot of technical scenarios and training based off of that. Are there, or is there training on low offense scenarios? Like looking at what are the complaints that are most often received and how are those presented or introduced in the academy, so that there's a potentially deeper understanding of why, how, who, and more importantly, how do we prevent officers from engaging in that type of conduct where early on it may feel like a non-issue, but in the reality it takes up a lot of the time in the department, and it makes up a bulk of the concerns of the community.
So to your first point regarding command staff as accused, so again, the number of complaints that staff officers receive is much lower from the public because there tends to be less interaction between a captain or above with a member of the public. However, that does occur as far as the nature, and then you'll have department allegations that may have to do with neglect of duty or off-duty conduct, something to that effect. I don't have a breakdown to provide you today with the nature of those allegations, but we can certainly work on that. So it's not as heavily tilted towards public complaints as it would be for a normal patrol officer, say. To your second point, when it comes to training, I think that is definitely room for improvement on our side when it comes to this, but I will say this, because our department's intake policy for complaints is so stringent and so open to complaints, the minute a member of the public says they want to make a complaint, and again, this is something that we'd like to look at as far as a procedural aspect. If the minute the officer pulls over a car, chirps the siren, gets out, and the offender rolls down the window and they say, for instance, you're stopping me because I am a protected class, that complaint needs to be initiated. So even though that officer, and we've seen this time and time again on body-worn video, and it's very difficult to watch from the standpoint of an internal affairs investigator or overseeing these investigations, because many times what will happen is that officer will explain, no, I'm stopping you because We just had a pedestrian killed in an intersection behind you that you just rolled through a stop sign at, a week ago. That's why I'm stopping you. I couldn't even tell your race because your windows are tinted, which is also a violation too. So we walked through but that complaint and the reason for the stop, and the officer can do an outstanding job of explaining to this member of the public what's actually occurring. But the problem is in our system, as it currently stands, once the offender makes that allegation to the officer, it's a complaint, and it adds to our resource drain when it comes to doing a full investigation. Because even at the end of some of these, and this, I'm telling you, happens time and time again, the offender can say, no, I don't want to talk to a supervisor. It's fine. I understand now. I'm sorry. You did a great job, officer. Thank you. The department will still initiate a complaint in that case and still do a thorough investigation. And obviously, it's going to come out as, no misconduct on the part of the officer, but it's really painful for us to use those resources in a case where an officer does that. So what we'd like to look at is many times the complaint numbers don't tie into what you're saying. Our officers many times do a great job of diffusing a situation. But once that allegation is made, we initiate, and it goes through the whole process.
Commissioner Garcia, so we have to report back here in December on bias policing only. We're going to be called back. So we can get the allegation types for command staff and break that out for you so we can have a discussion on that. And then work with training division or the academy staff to see what exactly is discussed in regards to complaints. I don't have that information of what their standard training is per se, of what they're talking to the new officers about, but we can report back on that.
Yeah, I think basic training. So like if someone gets pulled over and say, hey, you pulled me over because I'm brown. And the officer says, no, that's not why, it's because of this. We already started, the officer already started with no. And so the perceived reason why someone got pulled over is their reality. And so to dispute their reality is a difficult thing for people then to get over. So the training doesn't have to be, it has to be more of like social engagement type training to really ensure that there's language that's used and there's sort of that emotional response that's understood, so that instead of no, it's because of this, it's I'm sorry you feel that way, it's because of this, or I'm sorry you feel that way, here is the process to complaint. However, so I'm sure there's other ways of introducing it again early on in an officer's career where they have sort of that understanding of the perceived, the reality, the interactions that this person may have had over their lifetime of officers. And so, again, those things, although aren't the issue at the moment, potentially when there's the initial contact, those things are quite often very much impacting that contact.
So Jerry can add, and then I can add a couple different training scenarios that we had lined up last year that we're hoping to bring back in regards to bias policing. But maybe I'll save that till December. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, so I teach one of the blocks for the recruit officers. It's literally the second week before they graduate, so we get them at a good point because they're about to hit the field in the streets. So in that block, we teach identifying what misconduct is, but we really touch on bias policing because a lot of those, a new officer that has no clue about, 6 months ago they were civilian. So now they're supposed to know what bias policing is and how to identify it. So we get ahead of it by teaching them that any inference or anything that would make you believe that they're suggesting that they were stopped for belonging to protected class, you shall report it. On top of that, we convey to them that we would like it if they speak to the community member like an adult and break down why you're stopping certain folks. Unfortunately, once officers know that there's a subject of a complaint, a lot of the time they shut down. Obviously, that comes with time. The more tenured officers with a little more time, they're a little bit better with their words and could communicate better with community members. So ideally, yes, in a perfect world, we want a recruit to come out of the academy as articulate, as sharp as we could make them, of course. But I think that's why ACR mediation provides that platform for them to explain to each other why something is taking place.
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of, and this was mentioned already, in terms of like options for just straight suspension, sort of those debrief opportunities or learning opportunities, Is that something that we can implement into the discipline process as we're updating it? And sort of what are the limitations? And that's not a real question to ask here, but just really exploring like how can we get creative with that learning opportunity so that it isn't just punishment. It could be the community service. It could be additional training. It could be some of the pieces that already exist where you write a debrief statements and this is what I understand now of this, or this is how I feel about it. Again, just having those ongoing opportunities as opposed to just staying home.
Yes, sir. Just with Chief McDonald taking the helm here as the chief, that is what he said immediately was to let's create opportunities for folks to learn and develop and to really provide some guidance and training to not be punitive. And we agree. If there's opportunities with our individuals working out there doing a very tough, dangerous job, if we could find better ways to train them and advise them on various situations and make it a training opportunity, that is the best thing for the community and for the individual officers. And so that's what we're looking to do. There's a whole list of things we're going to propose to the chief and working with the LAPPL and all the other unions, civilian unions, to try to enhance this process and make it better for everyone, to make it more training-led. And hopefully we can get that accomplished soon. I think we're right there. Obviously we have to conduct some more meetings, but that's the plan and that's the goal.
Thank you. And regarding the, so there's a complaint and the discipline process focuses on an individual or individuals involved. Is there a way to introduce affiliated involvement in the disciplinary process? So an example, after X number of complaints within a division, the lieutenant or the captain is then held to be responsive as it pertains to disciplinary process as a whole. And that doesn't mean discipline the captain in the same ways, but it says, okay, now the captain needs to explain why they have this many number of complaints within a time, or just review them in their roll call and say, so far this month we've have this many, and these are the things, these are some of the reasons why it's occurring, and how do we change that, and again make it a learning opportunity within the division, but included in the disciplinary process, again by identifying an affiliated classification.
So things like that are included already. So one of the captain's jobs are to evaluate all of the complaints that come in along with R&E and classifications. And one of the things they do is keep me informed with trends and patterns in a specific division or a bureau. So when we identify or they identify a thread, maybe it's a discourtesy theme in one certain division, we then look at the complaints, we look at supervision, not to be punitive because we don't want to be punitive. Again, we want it to be a learning session. We want to identify what the problem is and figure out why and what's being done and what type of counseling sessions or mentorships that are in place from the captain level down. So we do that already. Not to include an employee that is not being discourteous, but to hold the command staff accountable for what's taking place in their division, and just to make sure that they're aware of these ongoing trends and patterns that are taking place. You would like to think that they are, but there's many times that maybe folks just aren't really in tune with what's happening, and that's a common thread that we see. But our goal and what we do is mentor the folks that are running these bureaus, running the commands, and try to teach them and help them get resources, whether it's an ombuds referral for some type of internal feud, whether it's community officer relationships based on a watch. So we identify those common threads, make sure that the captains involved are aware of that, and then help lead them in the right direction to make decisions, but keeping everyone informed. So I think it's not punitive. We don't want to attack and add layers to complaints and put more people in complaints when you can make, it's not even disciplinary per se, unless you have some outlier, someone not making decisions or being in control of their division. But we look at that, I guess, as the short answer, as the final answer.
Thank you. And again, thank you for your patience. We're definitely going to have you back. It's very important. I'm going to try and keep my questions to yes or no. So if an officer resigns before the investigation is completed, do you complete that investigation?
Yes.
You do. If you have an officer that gets terminated because they refuse to answer questions, do you complete that investigation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And having said that, are there any other questions or comments? Again, you're a very important part of what we're calling the next chapter. This is a priority for the commission, a priority for Chief McDonald and the men and women of this department. So thank you for what you do. We really appreciate the amount of detail and the amount of exhaustive effort you put into making sure that the process is transparent and fair. So thank you all for what you do. Having said that, I'm going to move on and suggest that we take a 10-minute recess and come back at 12:35, and we'll complete item number 4. Thank you. To item number 4C, Department's report relative to the notification of the Department of Justice revised, notification of Board of State and Community Corrections revised, and death of an inmate division jails revised, et cetera. So I'm going to go ahead and give this to Director Rhodes. The floor is yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so patient.
Good afternoon, everyone. Elizabeth Rhodes, the Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy. And with me are my colleagues, Captain Omar Bazolto and Lieutenant Jesse Fulk from the Force Investigation Division, should you have any questions. Current law requires that we report all in-custody deaths to the Attorney General within 10 days. On the 1st of January 2025, which is sooner than you think, we will be required to report within 10 days of any change in the circumstances or any new information. And this, that is Assembly Bill 3092. These policies have been updated to reflect that. Additionally, as of January 1st, 2025, Assembly Bill 2531 defines an in-custody death, and we have put that into our policy, which is the same language that is in the law, and requires us to report on the internet when a juvenile dies in custody, there's a juvenile in custody death, and to update any changes in circumstances or information that we have. And that, although there are 4 revisions to policies, it is the genesis of those 2 laws that require these somewhat slight but important changes to keep us in compliance with the law. And if you have any questions, we are here to answer those.
Thank you. As we discussed, brevity is appreciated. I'll go last. I will defer to Vice President Shields.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Calanche. Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
None, thank you.
I'm sorry, I got to ask one. So, just a point of clarification. We adjudicated a matter this past year where unfortunately an individual died as the arrest was taking place. That was considered an in-custody death. Can you explain why?
So the definition that will go forward starting in 2025, which you can find in 2531, is the death of a person who is detained under arrest or is in the process of being arrested or is en route to being incarcerated. Even for, we don't have long-term jails, we have short-term. But that is the reason why it would be starting in January 2025. However, I will defer to Force Investigation Division if they have some information about previous.
Good morning, everybody. Director Rhodes did explain that succinctly. This new policy, as the Director Rhodes has explained, is really facility specific. So, Commissioner Suthers, as to your question, an in-custody death would still be reportable to the Department of Justice under the new legislation and mandates. This is facility specific. So they're really concerned about deaths in jail facilities. A new entity's been created at the state level called the In-Custody Death Review Division under the Bureau of Community and Corrections. So that entity is now requiring reporting in a 10-day period as well. So that is also a portion of what this new legislation is about as well. But that doesn't stop us from having to investigate and report all in-custody deaths outside of facilities as well. So I hope that answers your question.
And I will just say, while the reporting's a little different potentially, the way the department has always approached in custody deaths is the same, almost like an officer involved shooting in terms of how it's being investigated. Then it comes to the commission for adjudication. So is it really changing a lot of that process, or is it more of just the reporting of the numbers?
It's the latter. It's the reporting component. This new entity, in custody death review division, is now requiring us to report within 10 days and then a follow-up report as well. And again, they're really concerned with Title 15 concerns with deaths within jail facilities. But that's not going to stop us from reporting and investigating all in custody deaths outside of jail facilities. And then we will continue to report to the Department of Justice all statistical information regarding in custody deaths. This is narrowly focused on facility-specific deaths.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then I move that we adopt the recommendation for board action and approve the department's report and transmit to city council. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, sorry. Recommendation for board action, approve the department's report. Is there a second? Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now address item 4D, department's report relative to response to Public Safety Committee sworn personnel performing civilian duties as set forth.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Or good afternoon, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Sibley, Miss Yu, Chief McDonald, and Mr. De La Guerra. I am Anne Marie Sauer, the Commanding Officer of Administrative Services Bureau. I'm joined by Police Administrator Brian Taft, who's the Commanding Officer of Personnel Division. And the item before you is in response to a request from the City Council. So during the current year's fiscal year budget deliberations, the council approved a special study, which is essentially a longer-term report back versus a budget memo that's a quick turnaround, instructing the LAPD to report to the Public Safety Committee on the cost of using sworn personnel to perform duties that could be performed by civilian staff. The council requested that the report should break down each budget program by the number of sworn and civilian staff and the duties performed by each class of employee. So Brian's going to provide an overview of the findings from the questionnaires that were disseminated by the Chief of Staff. Before he does that, just to give a little context, because the next item is the fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget. As you will hear from Fiscal Group, the budget includes our most critical priorities and demonstrates our fiscal restraint, given the city's fiscal situation. If we were presenting the budget in different times, we would likely have a package before you that would include redeployment of sworn and replacing those with civilian, because that would be the ideal situation. That's not where we are. So although we have a number of positions, which Brian's going to get into, this is not the year for that. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Taft.
Thank you, Emery. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director, Inspector General, Chief, and Council. Before summarizing the results of the questionnaire, I think it's imperative to add context to the city's current fiscal situation. Over the last 7 fiscal years, the department has experienced a net loss of 1,216 sworn personnel and 415 civilian employees, which is over 1,630 total positions or people. In conjunction with the loss of employees, the department has also seen a significant reduction in funding of our vacant positions through the budgetary process, culminating in a funding reduction of 560 sworn authorities and 354 civilian authorities this fiscal year alone. This combined reduction of funding of approximately 900 authorities severely limits the department's ability to provide appropriate staffing and forces command staff to utilize the limited resources available to them in the best possible way. Additionally, due to the prioritized critical hiring process, which those who aren't familiar is a managed hiring process or a hiring freeze for civilian positions, there has been a recent increase in sworn officers performing civilian tasks. The summary of the questionnaire that we provided. In the spring of 2024, a department questionnaire was sent out. Of the 88 divisions that responded, 54 responded that they were currently utilizing sworn officers to complete historically civilian tasks. The results are as follows. 225 sworn officers are currently performing the duties typically assigned to civilian personnel. The sworn ranks range from Police Officer 2 to Detective 3, with the most being Police Officer 2s and Police Officer 3s. The most identified tasks being performed are general administrative duties, which includes timekeeping and project coordination. Other not as prominent tasks include crime analysis, property disposition, audiovisual support, auto clerk, detention officer, and security officer functions. The top budget programs currently utilizing sworn officers to perform civilian tasks include the Field Force, which has 86 officers, Internal Integrity and Standards Enforcement Bureau, which is 31 officers, Specialized Enforcement and Protection uses 29 officers, and Specialized Investigations using 22 officers. Our analysis concluded that 219 civilian positions could replace the 225 current sworn employees performing these functions. The top civilian classes that sworn are currently utilizing include analyst, senior admin clerk, detention officer, and security officer. Finally, the department has long endeavored to implement civilianization on several key functions. However, reductions in civilian staffing, including funding issues related to procuring a pipeline of qualified personnel, and most recently the prioritized critical hiring process have made this unachievable. And after that, we are available for any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for questions or comments from any of the commissioners. Go ahead, sure.
One question, going back to the kind of like the budget and how this isn't a year for essentially opening up some of the civilian positions that are frozen. Have we analyzed, for the time that SWORN is conducting kind of like civilian operations, is that on overtime? Have we done an analysis of like, could that potentially reduce the amount of money the department is spending on overtime if we hired some of the positions on the civilian side?
No, I mean, the way that, and Brian can talk about it more detail, the way the questions were asked was really, are sworn doing this type of a thing, right? So in some cases, it was somebody doing it on a full-time basis, and in some cases, it was an ancillary duty. But it was, for the most part, their primary duty assignment versus kind of a report that they need to do as a police officer at the end of their watch type of a thing.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you, because this is obviously a concern, and if there's opportunities to free up sworn so they could actually be out in the community doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's the most ideal situation. So if there's ever an opportunity for that to happen, and in fact, other positions within the department that are currently being done by sworn that may actually benefit from having a civilian expertise, that is also another thing I would love to actually see. But I understand the purpose of this report and in the timing of the report with the budget. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Just so that I understand the reason why these sworn officers are doing civilian duties or jobs. The main reason is because we can't hire enough civilians to fill those jobs, or there's a freeze, or we need more classifications. So what is like the main reason?
I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. Those are some of the top priorities. Currently, in the last year, the biggest reason that we have sworn officers doing civilian functions is because we cannot hire civilians. Because of the freeze, we can't backfill those positions. And these tasks or these responsibilities are still pertinent and a priority for the department, so we have to get them done still. But all of those things that you mentioned are all variables or factors in why we're having our sworn officers do it. But right now, the biggest current one would be the fact that we couldn't hire civilians. If we had lists available, we couldn't hire them right now anyways.
Because of the freeze.
Correct.
Right. The last positions that we had unfrozen for us were in July of this year. And so we've continued to submit requests. And we understand the committee met last month, but we have not received any approvals there.
So, I mean, if these positions were unfrozen, would we have a pool of candidates? Or would we have to start from scratch and?
Well, I mean, there are
post
still
positions?
lists available. So for promotional exams or entry level, for example, detention officers, we have 28 police officers in our jails that work should be done by detention officers. And although the city continues to offer that exam, and we have actually great interest, and that's actually one of our unfrozen positions, so it's that and our PSRs, we still have not been able to get caught up, even though those are not frozen in that case, to fill those. But then with the others, when you're talking administrative clerk, crime intelligence analyst, those sorts of things, Some we probably have current lists for, some we may not, but the city is continuing to offer examinations and continuing to test and establish civil service lists. We're just sort of stuck.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, if there is a nexus, right, of like, here's like a list of position, or where we have a list of folks available to be hired, and we want to put officers back into police duties, right, whatever classification they are, like, could we advocate for like those to be unfrozen, like priority? I'm sure you already done this.
Well,
So I was gonna say, yeah, we actually did, and a perfect example of that is the city's Target Local Hire program. We can go through that program. We can expedite or request a prioritization for those positions to be able to put officers. We can hire admin clerks and clerical type positions with that process, even some security officers, which would allow officers to go right back to the field immediately. But unfortunately, even those positions have been frozen or are not given the prioritization that the department would like to see by this committee that's making these decisions.
Who's the committee? I'm just curious.
It's made up of the city administrative officer, the chief legislative analyst, and the mayor's office.
So it seems very complicated, but, okay, well, thank you for the information. I mean, that's helpful for us to know, just so that we understand, you know, how folks are deployed and maybe what we can advocate for as well.
Right. And I mean, certainly we understand the intent of the, you know, the committee and the freeze is obviously to slow, you know, the spending of money down, which I certainly get, given that fiscal group is one of the many hats or commands, but it does present other struggles. And I mean, as Brian said, sort of as the background, I mean, just the number of people, the sheer volume of people that we've lost in the last, you know, 5 to 7 years has been brutal.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
So if I could follow up on Commissioner Kalanche's comment, if we could unfreeze and hire off the list, replace those sworn personnel with civilians, the cost to the city would be less because we now have civilians doing it instead of sworn, and those sworn could go back in the field to those positions that are not being staffed, correct?
Correct. So, I mean, there's still an overall net increase, right?
Yes,
But the price of the individual doing the job, yes, certainly costs less. Correct, absolutely.
And not only that, too, I think you'd have more efficiencies with having civilians as subject matter experts being able to do some of these tasks that sworn are trying to do as best as they can, but might not have that experience or expertise.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
If there are no other questions or comments, oh, Commissioner Garcia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you sort of asked there, you did ask it, and so I was going to follow up to Commissioner Shields' question about, are some of these officers doing these duties on overtime? But the second part of the question was just salary rates in general, and could there be a reduction in these sort of civilian type positions, so in a way that's still efficient, still functions, so that we do see either a net zero or a reduction in the budget. So not necessarily replace a 1-for-1, but get these officers out and figure out how we can reduce some of these admin positions so that we're at net zero and present it that way to the committee so that we're within the spirit of the freeze on the higher positions, yet see a benefit to the community.
I mean, certainly in the justification, we, you know, explain if there's a situation where we know police officers are doing it, which I think that's actually part of why the detention officer classification is not frozen, is because the city council and the CAO and the mayor's office know, and they've been working with us for years to try to get the police officers out of the jails, right, and back to the field. But when personnel is submitting the unfreezes and providing that justification, I mean, that's, we highlight and we provide the most, you know, robust justification we can. And certainly if it is a, you know, a police officer performing it, or, you know, which again, it would cost less if someone else did it. Anything to really help bolster our argument and align with the priorities that the council identified when they established the freeze.
Yeah, given the fact that the council is the one asking for this kind of information, we have been using that as a justification to try to fill these civilian positions. But unfortunately, I think that the committee is looking at dollars and cents, so to speak, as opposed to maybe opportunity costs that are lost because of it. We do try our best to try to explain that and justify it, but unfortunately, I don't know what their threshold or their matrix is when they determine which positions they are allowed to fill and which ones aren't.
Right, and then, I mean, just from the first financial status report, so on our sworn salaries account, they already see we have a deficit. And our civilian salaries, they show us having a slight surplus. I mean, we don't, that's not what we project seeing at the end of the year, so that's all part of what the city's looking at. And then again, as we know, the reserve fund, the liability payouts, all of that. So it's a lot of competing priorities in terms of city dollars right now.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I move that we approve the department's report and transmit to city council. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Commissioner Suthers, could we
Yes, ma'am.
get, when this gets to council and can we get like just a report back on what council does with this report?
Absolutely, yes.
Even if it's just
I hope
like
it's more than receive and file, but we will let you know.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll now move on to the final
The grand,
regular agenda item. Item E, department's report relative to the 25-26 proposed budget. I'd just like to remind everyone, this is going to return to the agenda next week for possible board action. We've asked the public to submit public comment to our website. And I want to thank all of you for the numerous meetings you had with us along the way in compliance with the Brown Act.
absolutely.
Which means you had to duplicate your efforts. We do appreciate that. And also appreciate your response to last year's request to do that in a more timely manner, which you were able to do. We understand how difficult that was, but thank you again for working with us on that.
Thank you. I appreciate you acknowledging that. It is, there's been a lot of moving of mountains by these gals and the others in the room here and those back in the office. Good afternoon. I am still Anne Marie Sauer, the Commanding Officer of Administrative Services Bureau. I'm joined by Police Administrators Trina Unziker, who is the Commanding Officer Fiscal Group, and Assistant Commanding Officer Mara Legaspi. And so we are obviously here to present the department's 25-26 proposed budget. I'll keep it really brief, and then Trina's going to cover it. But so although the budget does not begin until July 1st of 2025, we began working on this budget on July 2nd of this year. So our proposed budget is consistent with the mayor's budget policy and the goals outlined in the department's strategic plan, which Ms. Unziker will go over in more detail. As I've already talked about, the department is cognizant of the city's fiscal challenges, which will be discussed in more detail. But as a result, the items before you are truly our most critical needs as we literally try and keep the wheels on the bus or on the patrol cars in the case of LAPD. We started with almost 200 distinct budget requests, which were vetted to ensure they align with our strategic goals, and ultimately ended up with our 27 most critical requests that are before you today. Just a little background on the process. After the proposed budget is approved by this board, presumably next week, it will be transmitted to the mayor and the CAO. We will then spend the next few months answering a multitude of questions prior to the mayor releasing her proposed budget. Per the charter, this must occur no later than April 20th of each year. At that point, the city council has its proverbial bite at the apple, first by the Budget and Finance Committee and then by the full council. By charter, the council must adopt a budget by June 1st of each year that will become effective July 1st. And although I can describe the process in less than 2 months, it takes the work of a very small but incredibly mighty team in Fiscal Group, like incredibly tiny mighty, to put together the 440 plus pages before you. I want to include, by acknowledging the team, in this month where we're really focused on gratitude, I truly owe a debt of gratitude to Trina and Mara, and I'm incredibly thankful for the OIC of our budget section, Patricia Paterno, and Assistant OIC Christina Youssef, and their amazing team. As I've said, small and incredibly mighty, and they've worked tirelessly to get us to this point. So I'm thankful for them, and with that, I will turn it over to Trina to take it from there.
Thank you, Ms. Sauer. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to try to be mindful of your time. There is quite a bit of material. As Ms. Sauer mentioned, there's over 400 pages to get through, and there have been some significant changes for the 25-26 fiscal year in terms of putting together the budget. So in the interest of letting you know, letting the public know, I want to tell you a little bit about the process, a little bit about what we're asking for, a little bit of how we're trying to be creative within our existing means. So I'm presenting the LAPD fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget, which totals $2.14 billion. This represents an increase of $160.5 million, or approximately 8.1% over our current adopted budget. As we developed this budget, we were mindful of the city's challenging fiscal outlook, with citywide projected deficits through 28-29. This reality required that we take a fresh approach to budgeting as called for by Mayor Bass. Our budget development process this year was more focused than it has been in recent years. We began with a review of our base budget to ensure alignment with current priorities and with community needs. We closely evaluated nearly 200 departmental requests through the lens of both operational necessity and fiscal responsibility. The 27 remaining requests before you today represent our most critical needs, those essential to maintaining public safety and supporting our core mission to protect and serve Los Angeles. This year's budget process introduced several new elements designed to increase transparency and efficiency. Following Mayor Bass's direction, we participated in a two-step process for new and expanded service requests. We first submitted a short-form overview of our proposals to the mayor's office last month that allowed for early strategic alignment with city priorities. The mayor's office then provided feedback on both the policy and the budget sides, on which proposals warranted full budget request development. I'm pleased to say that they include all of the 27 requests that we put before them in the short form. This approach helped focus our efforts on initiatives that most directly support the city's key priorities. Where possible, we pursued cost-neutral solutions through strategic position realignments. For example, we're proposing several position adjustments across divisions that improve our operational capabilities without increasing costs. However, there are areas where additional investment is important to maintain basic operations and community safety services. Our most pressing needs include funding for sworn salaries to support 13 recruitment classes of 45 officers each and address attrition, along with funding to support our civilian professionals and the cost of living adjustments pursuant to their bargaining agreements. This alone makes up approximately 91% of our net request, along with requested increases to our overtime accounts. The salary adjustments are essential to maintain our workforce and support our recruitment goals, which have shown promising results with our outreach strategies. Vehicle replacements, as 50% of our fleet exceeds replacement criteria. This situation has developed as only 38% of vehicle replacement requests have been funded over the past 7 years. The impact is especially critical for our black and white patrol fleet, where 48% of the just over 1,500 vehicles exceed criteria, with 460 surpassing mileage limits and 254 exceeding age thresholds. This aging fleet poses significant risks to emergency response times, vehicle reliability, and officer mobility and safety. Technology modernization, including real-time crime centers, cybersecurity upgrades, and an improved LAPD online website. The website improvements will align with council direction regarding digital modernization and improving the city's online presence, enhancing transparency and public access to police services. Facilities maintenance and safety equipment funding to meet Cal OSHA mandates and protect employees from elevated lead levels and noise exposure on all ranges. We're also requesting funding for custodial and landscape maintenance services at LAPD facilities, which serve as community hubs and contribute to both public perception and personnel morale. Contract security services funding increase to address rising costs from annual living wage ordinance increases and growing security needs. This service is important for maintaining secure facilities and allowing sworn personnel to focus on core law enforcement duties. Continuing Resolution Authorities 4 and adding one Captain 3 position to our strategic planning group to prepare for upcoming high-profile events. This team is key to overseeing our 4 citywide incident management teams, leading safety service cost recovery efforts for large-scale events, and developing long-term strategies for major events, including the 2026 World Cup, 2027 Super Bowl, and 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. We're continuing our MTA contract with adjustments to support the Airport Metro Connector and Emergency Security Operations Center. This includes funding for 116 positions to maintain our multi-layered approach to public transit safety. 2 replacement helicopters are needed to maintain our fleet of 17 aircraft. Currently, 7 helicopters exceed both flight hour and service year thresholds, impacting our ability to maintain sufficient mission-ready aircraft. This affects our capability to provide air support for public safety operations, with only 59% of our fleet typically available for daily deployment. I want to emphasize that in addition to the request for these new and expanded services, important programs continue in our existing base budget as well. Our employee wellness initiatives remain a fundamental priority, recognizing that supporting our personnel's well-being is important for effective public safety. Through the creative use of existing resources and grants from the Los Angeles Police Foundation, the state, and others, we maintain our peer support network, wellness trainings, and health initiatives. While fiscal constraints limit expansion at this time, we continue working to better coordinate these initiatives across units to maximize their effectiveness. Our base recruitment and employment division budget of $500,000 supports our recruitment strategy, which has shown positive results. Our mentors reach out to approximately 300 candidates weekly, host regular hiring seminars at our training facilities, and conduct targeted outreach events. We've expanded our digital recruitment presence, which has driven increases in applications and candidate engagement. We also maintain our successful partnership with the D.D. Hirsch Suicide Prevention Center through the call redirection to ensure suicide safety, also known as the CREST program. This intervention approach connects individuals in crisis directly with mental health resources and support services, reducing the need for law enforcement response when appropriate. While LAPD remains the primary responder to 911 calls, we continue to refine and enhance our service delivery model, including the expansion of the unarmed model of crisis response pilot program from 3 to 6 divisions in the current fiscal year. Our mental evaluation unit maintains its current staffing and resource allocation through our ongoing partnership with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. This budget represents careful prioritization and balancing of needs against resources. Every dollar requested aligns with our mission to provide professional, effective, and equitable law enforcement services to all Angelenos. While fiscal constraints require difficult choices, our proposals maintain focus on constitutional policing, community trust, and operational excellence. So at this point, I've covered a lot of information. I hope it gave you an overview of our budget priorities and the decisions that we're proposing. So I'd like to open the floor to any questions you have or anything we can clarify.
Well, thank you again for all of the meetings that we've had leading up to this. That was very helpful. I just have a couple things. As we would like to envision 45 officers per graduating class, at the same time, vehicles to maintain our fleet, we're only 2 budget cycles away, not counting this one, from LA 28. is that going to put us in a position where we're going to be operationally ready at that time?
I can say we are doing the best that we can. Certainly, our RED is able to ensure that as much of the contract as is available is targeted toward digital advertising, which we found to be successful so far. And I know they were recently here in commission expressing some numbers where they were able to walk through the increases in the number of applicants, increases in the level of interest. And so what we're hoping to do by asking for the 45 per class is to ensure that we can attract as many people as possible, that we get closer to that number, and that we be prepared for it. Because for the 25-26 budget, those funds and that hiring plan needs to run through June 30th of 2026. And so as we continue to make progress, we're hoping to be able to meet those goals and make sure that we have the salary funding that's needed to support that level of staffing.
Thank you. What is our commitment personnel-wise, and we don't have to get into the weeds if you don't know the exact number, but I would like to know eventually, what's our commitment to the airport metro connector in terms of security or public safety on that connector when it's finished next year? And the reason I'm asking is, are we taking that on, and why isn't someone else taking that on?
Because it's part of the MTA, which is why we've asked for that funding. I believe the total positions for MTA are 116 total, which includes the airport connector. So that's our existing footprint and the expansion there.
So the airport connector is considered MTA, and it's all part of the...
Correct.
Got it.
Yes.
I understand, okay.
Right. So I just took a look at the specific number for the connector and for the Emergency Security Operations Center, and that number is 5.
Oh.
So you're looking at 4 Sergeant 2s.
Got it.
And then 1 Police Officer 3.
Excellent, okay. And I'd just like to close my questions or comments with just thank you for always emphasizing employee wellness and alternatives to an armed response. Those are things that are very important, and I'm glad to see that we were able to keep that in our priorities list. Vice President Shields.
I will withhold any questions for next week, and hopefully we have a shorter agenda items on next week's calendar. But I really just want to reiterate appreciation for the process this year, and thank you for hearing us about the concerns we had last year for how much time not only we have to review this, but also the community has. So thank you for providing it, and we'll take this up next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clanche? Excellent. Commissioner Garcia?
Same. Thank you for the presentation and for the time leading up to today to visit with us and go through some of this information. I will hold my questions till next week, but hopefully that, and so far it seems like it is, in alignment with the priorities of what we have, not only currently and what we want in terms of priorities, but what's in front of us in terms of these big events. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move this to next week. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all the hard work on this, and we'll talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The commission will now recess into closed session. Thank you very much.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A and 5B in accordance to Government Code 54957.
The commission has concluded closed session, and we'll have a report out by Executive Director Sibley. Mr. Sibley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 5A1, at the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on November 19th, 2024, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 4-0 vote, and this is officer-involved shooting 068-23. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 Sergeant 1, 1 Police Officer 3, and 5 Police Officers 2. For drawing and exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no action, 1 Police Officer 3, and 2 Police Officers 2. For intermediate use of force, in policy, no further action, 5 Police Officers 2. And for lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 Police Officer 3. And for item 5B1, the matter was discussed. That concludes the report out.
Thank you. I move that the meeting be adjourned. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.